Chapter 31:28. Alas! Seeing this, Bai Haojiao sighed and said faintly, "This is the bottom of the West Sea. Where did the lightning come from? If it weren't for the thunder-condensing bead, even if others came here, they wouldn't be able to distinguish the true appearance of the treasury entrance." As the yellow sand disappeared from the reef, the thing below was revealed. Everyone couldn't wait to use the divine sense technique and the clear eyes technique to look at that side. Xiao Huan naturally released his divine sense without hesitation. When Xiao Hua saw the several acres of land, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The shock in his heart was unparalleled. Xiao Hua had seen the decline of the whirling world in the ruins of the Buddhist sect, and he had also seen the decline of the Million Buddha painting. He had also seen the real ruins of the Buddhist sect in the Million Buddha painting. Although those places could be described as vast, they were filled with a kind of old and perished aura. It was a kind of aura of passing away. And this several acres of land was actually a kind of Buddhist array. A Buddhist array that seemed to be laid on a blue stone. This Buddhist array was engraved with 18 arhats of different figures. These arhats were either empty-handed or holding Buddhist staffs. There were even 2 mighty arhats who were angrily subduing dragons and tigers. These 18 arhats were huge in size, and they were divided into 18 regions, completely occupying an area of several acres. Under the careful sweep of Xiao Hua's divine sense, he understood. The figures of these 18 arhats were not truly engraved on the blue stone. Instead, they were formed by countless Sanskrit characters that flickered with a faint Buddhist light. These runes quietly stagnated on the blue stone, as if they were part of the blue stone. Looking at these blue stone emitting a faint Buddhist light, Xiao Hua thought without hesitation that this blue stone might not be blue stone. It was probably formed by billions of Sanskrit characters. 18 arhats array? How is this possible? Master Qingchen was even more shocked than the others. He almost blurted out, "How could the secret array of the Western Paradise appear here?" Master Qingchen, this Buddhist array. Su Zhuoyang was also shocked by this Buddhist array. At this time, he came back to his senses, and his face was very ugly. He turned to look at Xian Cheng and asked Master Qingchen, "This is our Buddhist sect's very famous Buddhist array, called the 18 Arhat array. Su Tanyue, please take a look. The one sitting on the deer is Arhat sitting deer. The others are Arhat holding bowl, Arhat totem, Arhat riding elephant, Arhat laughing lion, Arhat happy, Arhat reaching hand, Arhat meditation, Arhat ear digging, Arhat pouch, Arhat long brows, Arhat guarding door, Arhat sitting meditation, Arhat crossing river, Arhat subduing dragon, and Arhat subduing tiger. They are the 18 Arhats, the 18 eminent monks of my Elysium. Each of them has their own divine abilities and methods. This 18 Arhat formation has even condensed the divine abilities of the 18 Arhats within it. Unless one is an almighty, one cannot break the formation." As he said that, Venerable Qingchen looked at Xian Cheng and smiled bitterly. "Senior Xian, if you want us to break this Buddha formation, I'm afraid it's impossible." Yes, the little nun is right. Bai Haojiao's expression returned to normal. He glanced at Venerable Qingchen and asked Xian Cheng, "This Buddha formation has a vast aura. I was intimidated by these 18 arhats at first glance. Moreover, this Buddha formation is divided into 18 regions. None of the regions can be broken by us. Not to mention that the 18 regions are connected together. I don't believe that these 18 regions have no connection with each other. Old turtle shell, do you have this ability?" Hee, Xian Cheng sneered and said, "This old man has already seen this 18 arhat formation. Otherwise, how could I let fellow immortal Su find a Buddhist formation master? How could I let fellow immortal Su find 4 fellow immortals who can control the 5 elements primordial qi?" "You've already prepared?" Bai Haojiao was somewhat surprised. "You can break the Buddha formation?" Then, he looked at the surrounding cultivators in disbelief and said in surprise, "Just based on these few cultivators with primordial qi of no more than 3rd or 4th stage. How would I know if I don't try?" Xian Cheng said indifferently, "This old man has lived for so many years. Although my cultivation can't compare to yours, My knowledge should surpass yours, right? Hehe, Bai Haojiao knew about the grudge between him and Xian Cheng. This kind of conflict of interest could not be easily resolved. This time, it was only a temporary cooperation. When they returned to the Dragon Palace, it would still be the same scheming as before. Therefore, he did not continue the conversation. Little friend Xiao, you know about formations. Let's see how you can break it. Xian Cheng was not in a hurry to say the method of breaking it. Instead, he looked at Xiao Hua. Yes, this Xiao will take a careful look first. Xiao Hua nodded and released his divine sense to examine carefully. Oh, you actually know about formations? Bai Haojiao did not expect that the most silent Xiao Hua was actually a formation master. Moreover, seeing Xiao Hua actually release his divine sense, it was even more inconceivable. You are actually a Taoist disciple? There is nothing impossible in this world. Xian Cheng replied indifferently, do you think that everything in this world is in your eyes? Xiao Hua closed his eyes and released his divine sense. After a full meal's time, he opened his eyes and said, this 18 Arhat formation is really powerful. The 18 Arhats are like the same person. They are tightly intertwined and inseparable. If we want to break the formation, it is absolutely impossible with just the few of us. Of course. Xiao Hua changed the topic. With the few people that Senior Xian found, this Xiao thinks that if we use the 5 elements formation of Taoism to divide these 18 Arhats into 5 parts and cut off their connections, then it is not impossible to break them one by one. In particular, we just want to enter and do not need to completely break it. As long as we break one part, we can make this Buddhist formation reveal a flaw. Su Zhuoyang, who was at the side, naturally explained what Xiao Hua said again. Good. Xian Cheng clapped and said, little friend Xiao has the same idea as this old man. I just don't know if little friend has a method to break the formation? Senior Xian. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. Breaking the formation is easier said than done. Although this Xiao can see it, if this Xiao really wants to break the formation, this Xiao still has to think hard. Not to mention a few days, even dozens of days of racking my brains may not be able to do it. Since Senior Xian has already prepared, there is no harm in taking it out and letting this one see. Hehe, Xian Cheng waved his hand and a jade eye appeared in his hand. He handed it to Xiao Hua and said, little friend Xiao, take a look. Seeing this, Xiao Hua waved his hand and looked at Su Zhuoyang with a bitter smile. This Xiao can't bear it. Please explain it to me. Su Zhuoyang nodded and took it. After he finished reading, he nodded slightly and told Xiao Hua. It turned out that what was recorded in the Jade Eye was a 5 elements formation of Taoism. Although this formation looked simple and Xiao Hua had never seen it before, it was similar to what Xiao Hua said. Xian Cheng was going to use the 5 elements formation against the 18 Arhats. Senior Xian, it seems that this 5 elements formation needs formation plates and formation flags, right? Xiao Hua asked with a bitter smile. Even if it needs the 4 immortals to refine it, I'm afraid that with Taoism's magic power, there will be a conflict. Formation plates? Formation flags? Xian Cheng was slightly stunned and said curiously, this old man only knows about Taoism's formation diagrams and has never heard of any formation flags or formation plates. After he finished speaking, he looked at Su Zhuoyang who was explaining and smiled. Originally, to restrain this 18 Arhats formation, the 4 symbols catalog of the 1,000 demons sacred realm is the most suitable. Unfortunately, this old man has no fate to go to the 1,000 demons sacred realm. Even little friend Leopard has probably never seen the 1,000 demons sacred realm's sacred array catalog, right? Hearing this, Leopard's spiritual master's face revealed a rare awkwardness and said with a smile, Junior's cultivation is shallow and has only heard of the Great Sage Hall. I have never known where this Great Sage Hall is. Therefore, I have never seen one of the Sacred Array Catalog's 4 symbols catalog. Yes, little friend Leopard, who is considered a reputable demon cultivator in the 1,000 demons sacred realm, has never seen it before. How could this old man get it? Xian Cheng shook his sleeves and a formation diagram that was flashing with brilliance flew out. He said with a smile, therefore, This old man could only settle for the next best thing and racked my brains to get this 5 elements evil punishing formation diagram. 5 elements evil punishing formation diagram. Bai Haojiao heard and immediately screamed, You actually dared to sneak into the Dragon Palace's treasury? And dared to steal this 5 elements evil punishing formation diagram from the treasury? What's wrong? Xiancheng said with a cold smile. You think this old man doesn't know that you went in before? Where did you get that jade water spirit from? If not for the jade water spirit, how could your cultivation catch up to this old man? Bai Haojiao was also somewhat shocked and pointed at Xiancheng, not knowing what to say. The Dragon Palace's treasury is also not yours. Wouldn't it be a waste if this old man didn't take it? Xiancheng sneered. How did you enter the Dragon Palace's treasury? This old man knows clearly. Formation diagram? At the side, Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He could ignore the tit-for-tat between Xiancheng and Bai Haojiao, but he couldn't ignore the formation diagram. He really didn't know what the formation diagram was. Xiaohua interrupted the two's bickering and reached out to ask, Can this junior take a look? This time, Xiancheng hesitated slightly. Although he didn't quite understand what Xiaohua meant, he naturally knew that Xiaohua wanted to take a look from his hand gesture. However, inside the water avoidance pearl, in the depths of the West Sea, he didn't care about Xiaohua's strength. However, he didn't dare to give this formation diagram that was related to entering the West Sea's lost treasure to Xiaohua. Xiaohua immediately understood and said to Su Zhuoyang with slight embarrassment, This Xiao didn't say anything. You wait and listen to Senior Xian's instructions. If there's anything this Xiao needs to do, please speak. Su Zhuoyang naturally understood Xiancheng's cautiousness and explained Xiaohua's words. Xiancheng nodded and took out 4 jade eyes from his sleeve and handed them to Su Zhuoyang, saying, Little friend Su, this is the method to control the 5 elements evil punishing formation. You and these 3 little friends can comprehend it. This old man will place the formation diagram on it. After you've finished comprehending it, we'll join forces to break the formation. Yes, this junior understands. Su Zhuoyang took the jade eyes and looked at them. He distributed different jade eyes to Master Qing Qin, Chu Muhuan, and Leopard Taoist Master. He also took one for himself and sat cross-legged to comprehend it. Chapter 31-29. Bai Haojiao. Xiancheng glanced at Bai Haojiao in the distance and said, This is the bottom of the West Ocean, a place where water-type spiritual energy is abundant. Moreover, we are from the Sea Clan, so in this 5 elements evil punishing formation, the Water Clan should have an absolute advantage. Originally, with the help of 4 little friends, this old man had a 40% chance of breaking the formation. Now that you're here, that chance has increased by another 20%. Our chance will be in this one move. Old turtle shell, are you trying to squeeze me dry? Bai Haojiao laughed coquettishly, and the old turtle shell spoke again. Damn it, then you should have a taste of this old man's turtle shell. Xiancheng's face turned red, and he became angry. He then waved his sleeve, and another jade eye flew in front of Bai Haojiao. This is the formation that this old man comprehended in the past. You should have a taste too. What's so good about your turtle shell? Bai Haojiao laughed again. It's not like I haven't tasted it before. If you want to let me know the benefits of your turtle shell, then work hard. When we get out of this West Ocean lost treasure, this old man wants to have a taste of your turtle shell. Bai Haojiao's teasing was very obvious, and Xiancheng's face turned red. His beady eyes flashed with a peculiar brilliance, and he looked at the others who were comprehending with their eyes closed, and said with a lewd smile, Since you want to know, then this old man will definitely satisfy you. Don't worry. This old man will let you know what it means to be strong with age. Bai Haojiao laughed, and gave him a coquettish look, as if the previous grudge had completely disappeared. He took out the jade eye, and a trace of blue light appeared in it as he carefully looked at it. Seeing that the 5 of them were all comprehending the jade eye, Xiancheng's expression changed, and he flew up again, out of the brilliance of the water avoidance pearl, and towards the 18 Arhat formation, and looked at the formations one by one. After 2 full days, Xian Cheng's face became somewhat impatient, and the others opened their eyes one by one. Everyone. Xian Cheng glanced at Bai Haojiao and said with a bitter smile, "You all know that this old man and Bai Haojiao are the vice inspectors of the West Ocean, and we can't leave the Dragon Palace for a long time. This old man asked for leave to come here, and presumably Bai Haojiao is the same. We don't have much time left." "Yes, I understand." Su Zhuoyang exchanged glances with Wizard Qing Chen and the others before replying, "We've already understood how to control the formation map. As long as we follow your instructions, we can activate the formation map and imprison the 18 Arhat array in a short time." "How long?" Xian Qing raised his hand and stopped Su Zhuoyang from continuing. He asked somewhat impatiently. "It can probably stop them for the time it takes an incense stick to burn," Su Zhuoyang said after pondering for a moment. Clearly, the four of them had already discussed this earlier. The time it takes for an incense stick to burn will be sufficient. Xian Qing nodded slightly, glanced at Bai Haojiao, and asked, "What do you think?" "Yes, I think so too." Bai Haojiao nodded and said, "If the time it takes for an incense stick to burn isn't enough, then let's push the water spirit diagram to the limit and break the 18 Arhat diagram. I'm afraid that no matter how much time we have, it will be useless." "Fellow immortal Xiao." When he heard up to here, Su Zhuoyang turned around and asked Xiao Hua, "Can fellow immortal use that seal again now? If fellow immortal can assist Senior Xian, that would be even better." "Of course." Xiao Hua waved his hand, and the seal of overturning the sea flew out of the space. It turned into a fist-sized seal and landed in his hand. "Oh!" Bai Haojiao's snake eyes lit up. He looked at the small seal and said curiously, "Is this a Taoist Dharma artifact? It seems like it can really restrain the water spirit diagram. If its power is enough, it can also be useful in breaking the formation." "Let's do it." Xian Qing glanced at the seal of overturning the sea. He wasn't too surprised and waved his hand. Su Zhuoyang and the others didn't dare to be negligent. They all urged their origin power and were about to fly up. Xian Qing shouted again, "Two little friends, if your mounts can do it, let them out. If you can help, then do it." "Yes, Junior understands." Chu Muhuan and Master Qing Chen heard and waved their sleeves. The Rainbow Luan and the Cloud Crane flew out respectively. "Let's go." Master Qing Chen landed on the Rainbow Luan. He pointed his finger, and the cracking cauldron flew out. A crimson flame flew out from the cauldron and suddenly exploded in midair. It was like an exploding lantern, covering Master Qing Chen and the Rainbow Luan. Everyone felt the entire brilliance heat up abruptly. The Buddha's light on Wizard Qing Chen and the Phoenix's body flourished. This Buddha's light was like a fire that transformed into a ball of crimson fire. It charged out of the water avoidance pearl and burned a space of several feet in size in the seawater, flying towards the east side of the formation map. Master Qing Chen's flame was so hot that even though it had flown far away, the boiling hot breath could still penetrate the water spiritual energy of the West Sea and rush to everyone's faces. "I'm going." Immediately after, the leopard Taoist let out a roar and opened his mouth. The magnificent mountain box flew out. As the leopard Taoist spat out a mouthful of demonic energy, the magnificent mountain box emitted a dazzling yellow light. A heavy aura came from the magnificent mountain box, and a strand of dust rose from this aura. As soon as this small cloud of dust appeared, it forced the light of the water avoidance pearl to sway. It expanded by more than 10 feet. Then, with the sway of the light, the cloud of dust turned into a whirlwind that was several feet in size. The Earth's spiritual energy in the whirlwind was rich. When Leopard Spiritual Master saw this, his body turned into the wind and rushed into the whirlwind. With another roar, he rushed to the north of the formation. Just as Leopard Spiritual Master left, Su Zhuoyang's body flashed with a silvery white brilliance. The true qi in his middle dantian immediately rushed out of his body. Su Zhuoyang looked like a burning silvery white golden flame. Clang! There was the sound of a sword ringing. Su Zhuoyang opened his mouth and the flying sword rushed out and fell into the true qi. The luster of the flying sword was golden. Boom! As the flying sword fell into the true chi was like the pitch-black rock layer under the twilight transformation technique. The entire true chi condensed, and in a moment, a flying sword that was several feet in size was born outside of Su Zhuoyang's body. The thin flame pattern was like the sword pattern of the flying sword. Go! Following Su Zhuoyang's sword-ringing sound, the golden flying sword rushed out of the light and fell on the west side of the formation. It's this Chu's turn. Chu Muhuan waved his hand and the rattan staff produced a green light. As the green light flashed, the entire rattan staff turned into a sprout. This sprout rapidly grew and turned into a small tree. In the end, it became a towering tree that was several tens of feet in size. Chu Muhuan opened his mouth again and a mouthful of true chi rushed into the big tree. A rattan as thick as a child's arm grew on the thick tree trunk. The rattan coiled out and fell on Chu Muhuan's waist. Chu Muhuan's body flashed with a green brilliance and fell on the roots of the big tree along with the rattan. The cloud crane also let out a cry and spread its wings to lift Chu Muhuan and the big tree, flying towards the south of the formation. Good! Xian Cheng was overjoyed and opened the formation in his hand. A stream of light came out of the formation and rushed towards the 4 people who had already stabilized themselves in the air. It was like a picture being shaken into the mortal world. 5 different colored balls of light came out of the formation and rotated under the feet of the 4 people. We'll go too. Xian Cheng glanced at Bai Haojiao and said, although you and I have a grudge in the past, we can only work together today. Understood. Bai Haojiao's face was solemn and her entire body trembled violently. Countless amounts of water spirit chi rushed into her body from the sea and a 3-meter-long python appeared again. Xianming also let out a loud cry. A blue brilliance blossomed from his body and a black tortoise the same size as the python appeared. As soon as the true forms of the python and the black tortoise appeared, countless tiny whirlpools appeared between them. The water spiritual energy rushed into the whirlpools like a swarm of bees, condensing into countless needle-shaped crystals in an instant. Almost without any sound, the black tortoise and the python left the water avoidance pearl and floated to the center of the formation. It was the largest blue ball of light among the 5 balls of light. Fall. Just as the black tortoise and the python approached the light, Xian Cheng's voice came out. Master Qing Qin and the other 4 balls of light fell into the formation. Shua. Almost at the same time, the 5 balls of light were like 5 huge suns. They suddenly emitted a strong brilliance and rushed towards the 18 Arhat formation. Boom! The impact was like an earthquake. Xiaohua almost couldn't stand still in the air. The water avoidance pearl was shot far away in this impact. Fall. How could Xiaohua let the water avoidance pearl run away? Opening his heaven and earth sleeve, he forcefully trapped the water avoidance pearl above his head. Wang wang! A violent roar sounded. In the center of the 5 balls of light, a whirlpool shaped like a tornado rushed into the sky. The black tortoise and the python were on both sides of the whirlpool. Countless needle-shaped crystals were born in this whirlpool and pierced towards the 18 Arhat formation. Every time those crystals pierced the formation, the entire seabed would shake. However, after half an incense stick's time, the power of the whirlpool was already somewhat weakened. However, the formation only trembled and didn't show any signs of collapse. Not good. Xian Cheng's voice came. He said anxiously, "Little friend Xiao." Although Xian Cheng didn't understand inscription armor, he called little friend Xiao very familiarly. Xiao Hua understood as soon as he heard it. Urging the magic power in his body, the seal of ocean overturning seal immediately let out a roar. The little earth spiritual energy on the seabed swarmed in. The seal of ocean overturning seal immediately became half a mu in size. Go! Xiao Hua's figure flew up and urged the secret technique. The coiling dragon on the seal smashed towards the center of the whirlpool. Rumble! An extremely strong vibration came from the center of the whirlpool. Clang! A bright light was born from the whirlpool. Ha! Xiao Hua, who was in the air, saw this light and knew that the 18 Arhat formation was broken by his seal of ocean overturning seal. He couldn't help but stare blankly. He thought that although his seal of ocean overturning seal was powerful, looking at the previous situation, he would have to urge it a few more times to succeed. How could it be effective in one strike? Could it be that my magic power has greatly improved? Xiaohua was somewhat puzzled. Chapter 3130. Okay, watch me. Without waiting for Xiaohua to think, Bai Haojiao's voice sounded. Then, the vortex suddenly expanded, and the light inside the vortex shone brightly. After a while, the light stopped growing stronger and the vortex remained stable. Little friends, Xianqing shouted in surprise, let's quickly enter the treasury. This 5 elements evil punishing formation can last for 6 hours. Everyone was overjoyed. Each of them jumped out of the light and landed beside the light with a joyous look on their faces. It was a hole a few feet in size. It was the water ripple under the feet of the river Arhat in the 18 Arhats formation. Around the hole, the Sanskrit characters that formed the water ripples churned violently, trying to gather towards the center to mend the hole. However, the blue water spiritual energy also spread out in all directions like a corrosive corrosion, negating the mend of the formation diagram. Looking at the other parts of the 5 elements evil punishing formation, it was the same as the water formation. At the same time, it emitted a strong elemental energy fluctuation to cover the Buddhist formation below, limiting the connection between them and weakening the power of the Sanskrit characters in the hole. The light emitted from the hole was a little red, and there was even a trace of heat. Moreover, the entire Buddhist formation blocked everyone's divine sense, Buddhist consciousness, and all kinds of eye-clearing techniques. No one could see the situation inside. Xiaohua landed beside the light and frowned. There was a trace of a fishy smell in this aura. It was the same as the aura he smelled when he was cultivating on Lava Island. Could it be that the West Sea relic is in the lava? Thinking of this, Xiaohua looked at Xiancheng and Bai Haojiao. At this time, the 2 monsters had already transformed into human form. Their faces were pale, and there was a trace of blue in the whiteness. It was obvious that they had consumed a lot of energy just now. However, their weak faces couldn't hide their surprise and helplessness. They looked at each other, and Xianqing smiled bitterly. I didn't expect the West Sea relic to be in the lava. For our sea race, it's really difficult. Then, Xianqing looked at Master Qingchen and smiled. Master, how about you go first? Okay, Master Qingchen already had a plan in mind. Hearing Xiancheng's order, he nodded without hesitation. Wait! Bai Haojiao hastily raised his hand and said, I'll go down with you, Venerable One. Anything is fine. Xiancheng was somewhat impatient. He seemed to be in a bad mood. He waved his hand and said, Let's hurry down and talk about it later. Bai Haojiao opened his mouth, and a semicircular jade bracelet flew out. He also breathed out a mouthful of water spiritual energy, and the jade bracelet turned into a watery light that protected Bai Haojiao. When Xiancheng saw this, he was stunned. He cried out in disbelief, West Dragon Ring? How can you have this item? However, just as Xiancheng finished speaking, he slapped his forehead as if he had come to a realization, and said regretfully, Alas, yes, you should have it. He must have given it to you. How could I have forgotten about him? Old turtle shell? Bai Haojiao was clearly surprised when he saw such an intense reaction from Xiancheng. A trace of understanding flashed across his snake eyes as he coldly said, Could it be that the half of the Western Dragon Ring that was long lost is in your hands? Xiancheng raised his eyebrows and said faintly, I only know that the Western Dragon Ring is one of the treasures that was lost in the treasury of the West Sea Dragon Palace. I didn't expect it to be damaged and fall into your hands. Since we have this item, we can go down even if it's a place of fire. The chance of getting the relic has increased by another 10%. Seeing that Xianqing did not admit it, Bai Haojiao had no choice. He looked at Master Qingchen, who was flashing with Buddhist light and had tiny flames mixed in the Buddhist light. Bai Haojiao's snake tail produced water vapor, and he slowly landed in the hole of the Buddhist formation. Master Qingchen did not dare to delay and flew down as well. Seeing the light above the hole, the water film of water spiritual energy did not obstruct them, and the two of them entered. "Come in." After a moment, Bai Haojiao's somewhat disappointed voice was heard. Xian Cheng heard the meaning in Bai Haojiao's voice, and his heart thumped. He did not have time to greet Su Zhuoyang and the others, and immediately jumped into the light. "Let's go." When Xian Cheng entered the Buddhist sect, Su Zhuoyang sighed. How could he not know that there was a problem again? He waved his hand, called Xiaohua, and jumped in as well. Xiaohua's eyes turned a few times, and he looked to his left. The water-blue brilliance above his head had become pitch black, and an incomparably strong pressure came from the darkness. Xiaohua understood that he was now at the bottom of the sea, and everything had to withstand the heavy pressure of the water. He did not have the water escape technique, and could only survive under the protection of the water avoidance technique. If he wanted to reach the surface, he had to rely on the water spiritual energy of Xian Cheng and Bai Haojiao, the two West Sea Patrol inspectors. He had no other choice. "Let's go, it's lava on both sides. Others may be afraid, but I am not." Xiaohua thought for a moment, and also jumped into the Buddhist formation. Chu Muhuan and Leopard Spiritual Master also entered. As soon as Xiaohua entered the Buddhist formation, an extremely hot aura hit him in the face. This extremely hot aura cut his face, wave after wave, as if it was endless. The dark golden brilliance protecting Xiaohua's body slowly flashed under the sharp heat waves. Xiaohua frowned slightly. He had no choice but to urge his true origin to replenish the consumption of the golden light, protecting his body from time to time. Clearly, this was a space that was hundreds of feet wide, and divine sense could not be used. Xiaohua's eyes could only see craggy rocks, and it looked like an ordinary cave. However, the rocks were scarlet red, and within that scarlet color, there were specks of Buddhist light. This Buddhist light was like millions of fireflies, covering the entire space. Although hundreds of feet of space was large, Xiaohua finished looking at it in a moment, and a thoughtful expression appeared on his face. Yes, the space was large enough, but there were no treasures. As for the passage leading to the depths, there was also nothing. How could it look like a lost treasure of the West Sea? Xian Cheng and the others were obviously stunned. After looking around like Xiaohua, Xian Cheng said, "Young friend Su, that Mo Yuntong seems to only say that there is a Buddhist sect, and you need to use the 4 symbols or 5 elements formation to break the formation, right?" "Yes, Senior Xian." Su Zhuoyang nodded. It also explained in detail how to break the 4 symbols or 5 elements formation, but this detail is also a general idea, and it needs to be carried out according to the specific formation diagrams. It didn't even mention the name of the Buddhist formation. As for the inside of the Buddhist formation, it didn't mention a single word. I thought that the lost treasure was inside the Buddhist formation. As he spoke, Su Zhuoyang reached out to take out Mo Yuntong. "Forget it, there's no need to take it out." Xian Cheng waved his hand and said, "This old man has seen that thing countless times." Every single word and sentence in the book was clear. Yes, Su Zhuoyang heard and his hand stopped. Xian Cheng was right. He had seen Mo Yuntong many times, and there was no need to look at it again. How is that possible? Bai Haojiao mocked. If the lost treasure is inside the Buddhist formation, then the cultivator who came here earlier, the one who left Mo Yuntong behind, has already entered the treasury? Didn't he take away the lost treasure long ago? Why did he leave Mo Yuntong behind? This old man thought. Xian Cheng said, "The person who recorded Mo Yuntong was the same as when I came here for the first time. He only used the thunder condensing bead to break the restriction formation outside the Buddhist formation. When he encountered the 18 Arhat formation, he was helpless. He could only study it for a long time, record the situation in Mo Yuntong, and leave helplessly. Therefore, my previous discussion with you was about how to break the formation. Of course, all of this was an assumption made under the circumstances that Bai Haojiao and Xiaohua hadn't come. I never expected that the two of you would actually show up, especially Bai Haojiao. If you work together with me, all of our troubles will vanish into nothingness. All of our plans will be useless. But this old man, I didn't expect that there was still another world inside. Since we're here, we still need to work hard. Su Zhuoyang thought for a moment and said, since we can break the 18 Arhat formation, it's not impossible for us to go further. This is a Buddhist formation. Speaking of this, Su Zhuoyang's eyes suddenly lit up. He seemed to have thought of something and cried, by the way, I remember that Mo Yuntong mentioned looking for a person from the Buddhist sect. Yes, that's right. Xian Cheng also smiled. Because the people from the Buddhist sect have Buddhist awareness, they can distinguish the Buddhist formation. This old man thought that Master Qingchen could play a role in breaking the formation, but I didn't expect that you could still play a vital role here. Master Qingchen. Leopard Immortal couldn't help but cry, can you still use your Buddhist awareness? Master Qingchen said curiously, of course. Is it possible that… Yes, my elemental spirit skill is useless. Xianqing said with a smile, what about Su and Chu? Junior's divine awareness skill and mind-clearing skill are useless. Su Zhuoyang and Chu Muhuan said in unison. Well, Master Qingchen, please release your Buddhist awareness and take a closer look. Bai Haojiao hurriedly nodded and said, is there anything strange in this cave? Yes, this poor nun understands. A strange look appeared on Master Qingchen's face. He released his Buddhist awareness and explored the space inch by inch. This space was also strange. It seemed to be able to perceive Master Qingchen's Buddhist awareness. Wherever the Buddhist awareness passed, there would be a faint Buddhist light flickering, and Sanskrit characters flowed in the Buddhist light. Strange. Xiaohua looked at the Sanskrit characters that were somewhat similar to the golden rune in the Buddhist light and was really puzzled. Normally, the Buddhist formation should be filled with golden rune. It's just like… But when he thought of this, he laughed inwardly. Damn it, the runes of my Taoist sect are actually not ordinary runes. The runes in the soul formation are not all green seal script, and the runes used in the 1 million Meng Mountains are only similar to the green seal script. So, how is it possible that the Buddhist sect is using the golden inscription? It must have taken hundreds of millions of years to evolve into Sanskrit and use it as the foundation of the Buddhist formation. This Sanskrit should have the same function as Buddhist seals or runes, right? Chapter 31:31. Just as Xiaohua was pondering, Wizard Qingchen's Buddhist consciousness had already scanned the rock wall for about 10 feet. There was nothing out of the ordinary. However, seeing that the Buddhist consciousness was useful, everyone's eyes were filled with hope, hoping that a miracle would happen. After all, they were not willing to give up any glimmer of hope at this point. Sure enough, after a meal, Wizard Qingchen's Buddhist consciousness had scanned 70% of the cave. Suddenly, there was a loud buzz, and a Buddhist light appeared on the rock wall. Then, the light shone brightly and a new rock wall rushed out from the Buddhist light. It expanded rapidly and stood in front of everyone's eyes in the blink of an eye. A world in a flower, a Bodhi in a leaf. Xiancheng could not help but groan. The Buddhist sect's Sumra technique is really amazing. I'm really speechless. Just as Xiancheng was about to praise, Wizard Qingchen held his head with both hands and screamed in pain. He fell from the air. Wizard! Su Zhuoyang was stunned. He did not dare to delay and hurriedly flew up to Wizard Qingchen's side. He reached out his hand to grab Wizard Qingchen's arm. However, just as he was about to touch it, he felt that it was inappropriate. Just as he was hesitating whether to withdraw his hand, he saw a blue brilliance appear. This brilliance firmly supported Wizard Qingchen. Su Zhuoyang looked in the direction of the brilliance. It was the brilliance emitted by the West Dragon Ring that Bai Haojiao was protecting. This brilliance was very strange. It was like a blue transparent futon supporting Wizard Qingchen's body in the air. This blue brilliance reflected on Wizard Qingchen's body and looked a little strange. Thank you, Senior. Su Zhuoyang hurriedly thanked him. Bai Haojiao ignored him and looked at the rock wall that had appeared. Wizard. Su Zhuoyang looked at Wizard Qingchen with concern. Is there anything wrong? If not, you can take a rest first. Sigh, I'm fine. This is another Buddhist formation, right? Wizard Qingchen struggled to get up from the transparent futon. A painful expression appeared on his face. My Buddhist consciousness has been completely absorbed by this Buddhist sect. Now, I have a splitting headache. I haven't found anything else wrong for now. Well, thank you for your hard work, wizard. When Su Zhuoyang heard that it was only the exhaustion of his Buddhist awareness, he knew that it was not a big deal. He felt relieved and said with a smile. At the same time, he looked at the stone wall with the same gaze as Master Qing Qin. The stone wall was over 100 feet tall, and the entire stone wall was like a crimson-colored glass. This crimson color was extremely alluring, and it looked as if it could completely suck in one's gaze. Furthermore, this glass was filled with flames. However, the strange thing was that the patterns and threads of the flames seemed to have solidified. Everyone could see them clearly with their naked eyes. What was special was that the flames in the glass didn't seem to have any heat. There was no feeling of rushing towards them. However, as everyone's gazes wandered, the crimson light flashed with a wrinkled luster. It was like a burning flame, but also like a blooming brilliance. When everyone looked at the flame and sized it up, they couldn't help but groan in unison. This transparent glass was even more magical. It was in the shape of a golden crow. When it had first appeared, no one had noticed it. Now that the flames had appeared, the golden crow had revealed itself. Golden crow. Immortal slaying demon formation? Next to Xiaohua, Leopard Master almost shouted out in disbelief. How is this possible? Xiancheng was dumbfounded. Bai Haojiao was dumbfounded. Su Zhuoyang was even more dumbfounded. The flames of greed in everyone's eyes were instantly extinguished. Instead, it was replaced by an expression of disbelief and despair. Outside the West Sea relic, there was an 18 Arhat formation that had already made them go through a lot of trouble. Not only did they use the 5 elements evil-slaying demon formation of the West Sea Dragon Palace, but they also used everyone's strength to barely break a flaw. Only then did they have a chance of 6 hours. No one would have thought that there was a demon clan's formation inside the 18 Arhat formation. Not to mention that they were not prepared at all. Even if they were prepared, with their cultivation, it was impossible to break this so-called Golden Crow immortal slaying demon formation. Leopard Master, are you sure that this is your demon clan's formation? Xiancheng still couldn't believe it. He still had a trace of unwillingness to give up and asked in a low voice. This one does not dare to confirm. Leopard Master unexpectedly shook his head. This one has never seen the Golden Crow immortal slaying demon formation before. I have only heard of it from others. Furthermore, this formation does not have the slightest bit of my demon clan's aura. It is completely unlike a demon formation. Although Senior Xian is from the Sea Clan, he should not have sensed this aura, right? Xiancheng did not comment. If he knew, would he still need to ask Leopard Master? However, the Golden Crow immortal slaying demon formation is a fire spirit formation. It can only be set up in this kind of hot aura. Furthermore, the shape of the Golden Crow, the flames and fire patterns in the Golden Crow's body are all the same as the Golden Crow immortal slaying demon formation. Leopard Master finally said, therefore, this one's intuition tells this one that this is my 1,000 Demons Sacred Realms Golden Crow immortal slaying demon formation. Intuition. Sigh, I'm afraid so. By Haojiao side, the West Sea relic was left behind by the annihilation of Taoists. There must be Buddhist and Confucian formations. It is not strange for the 1,000 Demons Sacred Realms formation to appear here. If there was only the 18 Arhat formation outside, this one would be suspicious. Anyone who obtained the 4 symbols catalog or the 5 elements formation diagram could enter. Then wouldn't the West Sea relic have already been taken away? Furthermore, this one does not doubt that behind this demon formation, there must be Confucian origin formation. At this point, a look of extreme regret appeared on her face. Our efforts this time have been in vain. Hee, that might not be the case. Xiancheng smiled and said, we have finally broken through the 18 Arhat formation and witnessed the Golden Crow immortal slaying demon formation. After we return, we will make plans. That? At this moment, a string of words that they did not understand rang in everyone's ears. What? Fellow Immortal Xiao, When this voice entered his ears, Su Zhuoyang almost jumped up. You said, you can try to break this formation. However, this is not some great heavenly cycle star formation. Are you really confident? Not only was Su Zhuoyang ecstatic, his voice was also trembling. This feeling of coming back from death's door was really wonderful. Yes, this one seems to have seen this formation before. Xiao Hua said with a smile. If this one is given some time, although I don't dare to say that I can break this formation, I still have some confidence in making it reveal a flaw for us to enter. Yes, when he saw this golden crow, Xiao Hua had a very familiar feeling. Isn't this the golden crow talisman? It was one of the innate divine restrictions that Xiao Hua gradually recalled after his Naiwan Palace's seal was broken. Since the rabbit talisman was either the great heavenly cycle star formation or the capital star formation, this golden crow talisman being some golden crow immortal slaying demon formation was not considered strange. However, Xiao Hua did not comprehend much about the golden crow talisman and still could not control it as he wished. However, if it was as Xiao Hua said, it would not be difficult to find a flaw to enter. After all, Xiao Hua's divine sense could not be used. However, when he saw the flames inside the golden crow's body, he already had a trace of understanding. This golden crow immortal slaying demon formation was probably not complete. Otherwise, it would be impossible to see any flames when the entire formation was made of golden crows. Hearing Su Zhuoyang's explanation, everyone's hearts were once again rekindled with hope. They all looked at Xiao Hua with bright eyes. Fellow immortal Xiao, how much time do you need to break the formation? Su Zhuoyang said happily, more than 6 hours? I don't think so. Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, give me an hour first. Good. Su Zhuoyang clapped and said, I will wait for fellow immortal Zhao's good news. Immediately, several people gathered at the side, seemingly discussing and waiting. Xiao Hua looked around the golden crow's stone wall for a long time, then sat cross-legged at the side and actually closed his eyes to meditate. Su Zhuoyang and the others watched anxiously, but they knew that Xiao Hua was thinking about how to break the formation, so they did not dare to disturb him. Sure enough, after an hour, Xiao Hua opened his eyes, stood up and said with a smile, fellow immortal Su, this Xiao is ready to break the formation. Good. Seeing that Xiao Hua had a card up his sleeve, Su Zhuoyang was really incomparably happy. He really did not expect that Xiao Hua, this Taoist loose cultivator he casually picked up on Lava Island, would actually be able to break the formation at the crucial moment. His divination was indeed correct. Xiao Hua flew in front of the golden crow, waved his hand and took out a dozen jade talismans that he hurriedly refined from the space. His eyes slightly narrowed as he looked at the golden crow for a moment, then activated his magic power. With a whoosh, a jade talisman rushed into the golden crow's abdomen. Wing. A low rumbling sound was heard, and a ripple-like flame emerged from that place. This flame rapidly spread until it affected the entire golden crow, then it slowly stopped. Xiao Hua's jade talisman actually entered the golden crow immortal slaying demon formation. Good. Su Zhuoyang clapped and said with a smile, fellow immortal Zhao's godly skill is like this formation should be broken. Hee hee. Xian Cheng, who was at the side, also laughed. Since this strange jade talisman could be sent into the demon array, then the other jade talismans could naturally be sent in as well. They could also create an array within this demon array. It was the same logic as the 5 elements evil punishing array breaking the 18 Arhat array. This Xiao Hua is a little strange. Bai Haojiao said with a frown, he clearly has a strange Taoist technique in his hands, why didn't he take it out earlier? Why did he have to ponder over it for so long? Senior, there's something you don't know. Su Zhuoyang said with a smile, fellow immortal Xiao is proficient in Taoist formations, I'm afraid that he doesn't understand the Thousand Demons' Sacred Realms formations. Even if he has some tricks, he should still think twice before acting, right? He won't do something, right? Bai Haojiao was still worried. Master Qing Chen said with a smile, although this humble nun is not very familiar with Xiao Tanyu, he is honest and noble. Furthermore, he has something to ask of this humble nun, so there's no harm. Oh. Bai Haojiao was non-committal when he heard that. The aqua-blue brilliance around him moved slightly, and the half of the West Dragon ring appeared at his waist. On the other side, Xiaohua was very cautious as he placed the remaining jade talismans in various parts of the Golden Crow Immortal Slaying Demon formation. Although he would ignite some flames every time, these flames would disappear without exception. "Alright, fellow Immortal Su," Xiaohua stretched out his hand with a smile and said, "I'm going to break the formation. Everyone be careful." "Got it." Hearing Xiaohua's words, everyone's body glowed brightly. Their expressions turned serious as they prepared to welcome any abnormalities that might occur. However, when Xiaohua's magic power surged and he made a hand seal and grabbed, there were no flames as Xiaohua had imagined. In fact, there was no movement at all. "That's strange." Xiaohua was stunned. He looked at the motionless golden crow with some confusion, then turned back to look at Su Zhuoyang and the others in the distance. The magic power in his body surged again, and he prepared to use 50% of his quintessential essence to give it a try. "Quick! Moyuntong!" Bai Haojiao shouted almost without hesitation, "There must be something in there that you haven't discovered yet." Bai Haojiao had never seen Mo Yuntong before, so he naturally didn't know the content inside. Seeing this situation, he naturally thought of this item. Although he had seen Mo Yuntong countless times, Su Zhuoyang naturally flipped his hand and took the Mo Yuntong that Xianqing gave him in his hand again. This is... Xiaohua's gaze swept past the Mo Yuntong in Su Zhuoyang's hand. A familiar feeling arose, and he almost groaned. "Isn't this the thing I got near the lava island?" Suddenly, a kind of warning arose in his heart. The hand that he stretched out again stopped, and the magic power that he was about to send out also stopped. Chapter 31-32. Just as Xiaohua withdrew his magic power, a sudden change occurred. An extremely strong suction force came from the Golden Crow Immortal Slaying Demon formation. The true essence in Xiaohua's meridians involuntarily rushed out of his meridians and into the Golden Crow. Moreover, Xiaohua's body was also pulled to the Golden Crow by this suction force, unable to move at all. He was paralyzed on top of it like a dead person. Not good. Xiaohua was greatly alarmed. He hurriedly struggled and shouted, "This Golden Crow Immortal Slaying Demon formation has changed. Fellow immortals, quickly leave." As he spoke, Xiaohua roared again. Chung, a ball of golden light appeared around Xiaohua's body. Countless scorching fire spiritual energy rushed into Xiaohua's body. At the same time, Xiaohua's dragon transformation art was activated again. Xiaohua wanted to use the dragon transformation art to cut off the suction force and use the heavenly law embodiment technique to forcefully pull his body away from the Golden Crow. Unfortunately, just as Xiaohua's heavenly law embodiment technique was activated, weng weng weng. A series of rumbling sounds came from the crimson walls of the entire space. Billions of Buddhist lights lit up like a fire seed, igniting the entire space. Countless merciless crimson flames rushed out from the stone walls and madly burned everyone. Covering the sky and covering the earth, there was nowhere to hide. What was special was that when the entire space turned into flames, the entire Golden Crow Immortal Slaying Demon formation also suddenly moved. An intense vibration, a kind of heaven-destroying and earth-extinguishing heat suddenly rushed out from the Golden Crow Demon formation. This change was really too sudden. Just as Xiaohua's voice came out, all of the flames were affected. Xiancheng and the others simply did not have time to escape and were surrounded by all of the flames. "Come out!" Xiancheng opened his mouth almost without thinking, and a jade bangle that was similar to a semicircle flew out. The moment the jade bangle came out, it immediately turned into a watery brilliance that protected Xiancheng's entire body. What was even more amazing was that this brilliance was like a waterfall coming out from Xiancheng's body. It connected with the brilliance of Bai Haojiao's West Dragon Ring and formed an oval watery brilliance. Old Turtle Shell. Seeing this, Bai Haojiao's eyes were filled with shock and ecstasy, "So that half of the West Dragon Ring is in your hands." Xiancheng snorted coldly, but before he could say another word, An even more oppressive and cold snort came from the golden crow immortal slaying demonic formation at the same time. Then, a seemingly corporeal divine sense swept over. This divine sense was extremely cold, and Xian Cheng and the others all felt a chill from the bottom of their hearts the moment they came into contact with it. However, the divine sense completely ignored them. After a slight sweep, it landed on Xiao Hua, who was struggling with all his might. At this moment, Xiao Hua's Dharma idol had just emerged from the golden light. In the 3 great continents, there are still successors of my Tao sect? How strange. A voice that sounded like an owl's came out of nowhere. Just as this chilling sound landed, the golden crow immortal slaying demonic formation suddenly moved. It actually opened its mouth and cried out as if it was real. A pure-colored thread of fire rushed out from the golden crow immortal slaying demonic formation, accompanied by an aura that could destroy heaven and earth, pounced towards Xian Cheng and the others. Xian Cheng and Bai Haojiao were protected by the West Dragon Ring's watery light, but Su Zhuoyang and the others were not. Just as Xian Cheng released the West Dragon Ring, Su Zhuoyang, Venerable Qing Qin, Chu Muhuan, and Leopard spiritual masters' bodies flashed with brilliance as they resisted the flames from the 4 walls. At the same time, they tried their best to fly towards the watery light. Unfortunately, everything happened too quickly. In the blink of an eye, the destructive thread of fire had already rushed in front of everyone. Fight! Su Zhuoyang's eyes flashed with horror and despair, but he still roared loudly. Sword light flashed around his body, and he wanted to join forces with the 4 of them to deal with the situation as they had discussed previously on Lava Island. Just as Su Zhuoyang's golden sword light, Venerable Qing Chen's Buddhist light, Chu Muhuan's green light, and Leopard spiritual master's demonic aura were activated, the thread of fire rushed over like a storm. Whoosh! It was swifter than a gust of wind sweeping away fallen leaves. All the sword light, Buddhist light, green light, and demonic aura were annihilated. The physical bodies of the 4 of them melted instantly, leaving only a large portion of their skeletons scattered in the fire, and rushed out of the space with the fire. The most eye-catching thing was that the pitch-black inky cloud eyes were still swaying in the fire. They also floated out of the space with the corpses, and fell into the West Sea once again. With a loud laugh, 4 blood shadows emerged from where Su Zhuoyang and the others had fallen. Like moths to a flame, they rushed into the golden crow immortal slaying demonic formation. A burst of hearty laughter sounded again. Little doll, don't struggle. You saved me today, so I won't take your life. Boom. With a muffled sound, the Dharma that Xiao Hua had just condensed collapsed. The vital core in Xiao Hua's body was completely absorbed at this moment, and not a single drop was left. It was just as the voice had said. Although Xiao Hua no longer had any magic power, nor did he summon the innate primordial water or any other treasures, there was a layer of faint black and white light around him. It actually blocked the destructive fire threads outside, and Xiao Hua himself was not injured at all. Kachacha! Just as the laughter fell, the golden crow immortal slaying demonic formation that had absorbed Xiao Hua's vital core suddenly cracked. With the dozens of jade slips that Xiao Hua had sent into the golden crow grand formation as the center, the cracks instantly spread throughout the entire golden crow. Boom! After the cracks, the golden crow immortal slaying demonic formation collapsed. Endless innate primordial fire rushed out of the golden crow's body like a flood, and behind the golden crow immortal slaying demonic formation, a black hole of several feet in size appeared. The sound of wind howling from within the black hole was endless, and the aura of death filled it. How is this some West Sea treasure? Bai Haojiao's shrill and terrifying voice sounded. This is the West Sea. The Sea Eye of the West Sea. Bai Haojiao and Xian Cheng both controlled the West Dragon Ring. Although the West Dragon Ring's light was gradually fading, it was still able to withstand the innate primordial fire and those strange fire threads. Bai Haojiao cried out in shock, as if he was extremely scared. How could he dare to stay here for even half a second? The demonic light around Bai Haojiao's body trembled, and he turned back into a small snake. With half of the West Dragon Ring in his mouth, he flew toward the hole that was closing up. With a cold snort, a black and white light shot out like lightning and hit the West Dragon Ring. Whoosh, the West Dragon Ring instantly turned into dust. Similarly, the half of the West Dragon Ring next to Xiancheng also shook and turned into dust. With the West Dragon Ring gone, the water light protecting Bai Haojiao and Xiancheng extinguished like a candle in the wind. The fire threads that had been surging around them immediately rushed into their bodies. Roar! Seeing this, Xiancheng hurriedly raised his hand. Without even thinking, he put the sea beast's core that Xiaohua had given him earlier into his mouth. Kacha! As the core entered his stomach, a burst of lightning appeared in Xiancheng's body. Following this lightning, Xiancheng's body was like lightning, and he instantly rushed out of space. It was actually the Taoists' lightning escape technique. Old Turtle Shell. Bai Haojiao's expression changed greatly. He never would have thought that the good-for-nothing in his eyes actually knew Taoist magic. And it was from this side. Bai Haojiao, don't think that I'm the same as you, that I only have eyes for the West Sea Inspector. Xiancheng's voice, which was also somewhat weak, came from the bottom of the sea. How can a sparrow know the ambitions of a swan? How can a slut like you know what I'm thinking? Save me! Bai Haojiao thought of how he had secretly stepped on Xiancheng, and how he had schemed against Xiancheng, and how Xiancheng had not responded at all. His heart was filled with incomparable regret, and he almost moaned. Huff! Unfortunately, just as he spoke, the true spirit fire annihilated him. His body turned to ashes, and his skeleton was also thrown out of space along with the fire. This little turtle actually knows Taoist magic? The fire thread had clearly rushed out of space for a few feet, and then it shrank back. Forget it. Seeing that you've worked hard, it can be considered as helping me escape. Anyway, I have enough blood spirits, so I'll spare your life. Then, Bai Haojiao's blood shadow also rushed into the pitch-black eye of the sea that was a few feet away. Under this terrifying aura, Xiaohua did not have the slightest ability to fight back. This aura was simply as grand as heaven and earth to him. He knew that even if he cultivated for another 10,000 years, he would still be unable to reach it. However, although he did not understand Bai Haojiao's words, the two words, Eye of the Sea, were somewhat similar to the inscription on the armor. Looking at the pitch-black cave in front of him, Xiaohua immediately understood. Eye of the Sea? This is not some treasure trove of the Western Ocean. As Bai Haojiao's final blood shadow rushed into the Eye of the Sea, a black and white ball of air rushed out of the Eye of the Sea. That ball of air did not look like anything, only two strange eyes, one on the left and one on the right, appeared above the ball of air. Kaka! That strange ball of air landed in front of Xiaohua, and an ice-cold divine sense swept over him. He laughed loudly. Brat, you saved me, so I won't take your life. However, whether or not you can escape from here will depend on your own luck. As he spoke, the ball of air rolled, and the black and white balls of air that had just protected Xiaohua immediately retracted. Countless flames immediately rushed over. Ha! That ball of air laughed loudly, and the countless true flames were unable to do anything to him. When the ball of air rushed to the hole where the Buddhist formation was about to close, it suddenly stopped. If I go like this, wouldn't it be boring? Wait until I destroy the plans of these bald donkeys. Let's see if they still have the mind to look for me. Immediately, two black and white rays of light rushed out, and pierced into the Eye of the Sea at a speed 100 times faster than Xiaohua's soul-punishing vital light. Rumble, a series of earth-shaking tremors burst out. It was as if the entire space was about to be turned upside down. Haha! That wild laughter became more and more distant, and there was no more movement. When Xiaohua saw that the laughter had disappeared, how could he dare to stop? He no longer had the weak and powerless appearance from before. A stream of innate true water rushed out from the clear water bottle and tightly protected Xiaohua. Then, Xiaohua took out a few spirit pills and sent them into the air. When a trace of true qi was produced, Xiaohua immediately used the wind escape technique to rush toward the hole in the Buddhist formation that was about to close. Chapter 31-33. The innate true fire in the space is indeed powerful, far beyond what Xiaohua had seen before. Even if Xiaohua could use the fire escape technique, he wouldn't dare to try it lightly. Xiaohua had seen the fate of Su Zhuoyang and the others with his own eyes. Therefore, Xiaohua would rather waste some time and use the innate true water to protect himself before using the wind escape technique. Seeing the gap in the 18 Arhat formation in front of him, Xiaohua believed that he would be able to pass through it with his transformation technique. This is the Eye of the Sea? Xiaohua was still looking at it and his mind started to work. What is the Eye of the Sea? Could it be the place where I went from the QC to the West Ocean is the Eye of the Sea? If that's the case, are there many eyes of the sea in the West Ocean? If this is really the Eye of the Sea, then the path behind me is the passage to the QC. Thinking of this, Xiaohua stopped and looked behind him with some hesitation. Yes, if behind him was the door to the Xiaoyu continent, how could Xiaohua not want to open it? Even if he had to go through the Sumer Buddhist formation, even if he had to go through the Clear Song of Time Demon formation, even if his cultivation was completely destroyed in the 5 Elements Annihilation Great Formation, Xiaohua was willing. Amitba. An abnormally compassionate voice suddenly sounded from the pitch-black Eye of the Sea. Immediately, something that looked like a broken scroll flashed out like a meteor across the sky. On top of the scroll, there were 2 small snake-like black and white energies coiling around it. As soon as this broken scroll appeared, the 18 Arhat formation beside Xiaohua immediately emitted the same faint Buddhist light as if it was breathing. Bad vegetable. Xiaohua suddenly came to a realization. Wasn't the scroll that suddenly appeared something that the person who flew out of the Eye of the Sea had used the black and white qi to destroy? Since it was a Buddhist weapon, then it must be. Sure enough, when Xiaohua hurriedly turned his head to take a look, he saw that there was still a foot-sized hole in the 18 Arhat formation. Now, it had already disappeared. Tens of thousands of Sanskrit characters were flowing within the Buddhist light. Xiaohua's vitality disappeared in a flash. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. Even if he wanted to go out now, he couldn't. The only place he could go back was the Eye of the Sea. Fortunately, this sea eye was a place of certain death in the eyes of others, but in Xiaohua's eyes, it was merely 100 years of bitter cultivation. Of course, just as Xiaohua was about to activate his magic power and fly towards the Eye of the Sea, his gaze fell on the space once again. Endless flames. Collect. Xiaohua clapped his hands almost without hesitation, and the magic bottle that contained the pre-celestial true fire appeared in his hand. He pointed his finger, and the magic bottle produced a strong suction force. The pre-celestial true fire nearby immediately turned into a stream and rushed into the magic bottle. Hee hee. Xiaohua laughed. Seeing the countless innate primordial fires disappear, he felt extremely happy. However, just as he smiled, he saw a trace of crimson flame move within the innate true fire. It was about to merge into the magic bottle, but before the flame could touch the magic bottle suddenly trembled. The space around the mouth of the magic bottle distorted, and Xiaohua's smile froze on his face. This is bad. Xiaohua suddenly remembered that this flame had an aura that could destroy heaven and earth. Although the aura had already disappeared, his magic bottle would probably not be able to subdue it, right? Out. Xiaohua did not dare to be negligent. He hurriedly opened his mouth, activated his remaining magic power, and spat out the spiritual fire. Hiss. The same crimson spiritual fire appeared, and the flame that was about to enter the magic bottle suddenly stopped. Shortly after, it turned around and rushed into the spiritual fire. Good, the 2 flames collided with each other, making a sizzling sound. They twisted together. Xiaohua was happy in his heart. He praised and immediately activated the divine fire art to control the spiritual fire. It was like a fine net that wrapped around the fire thread. The crimson flame seemed to have intelligence. It rushed left and right, wanting to rush out of the spiritual fire. However, after several attempts, it was not effective. It could not help but obediently stop there. Collect. Seeing this, he knew that in the future, if he slowly used the spiritual fire to wear down the fire thread, he would definitely be able to merge it into the spiritual fire. His spiritual fire would definitely make great progress, and he could not help but feel happy. However, he did not dare to collect the fire thread into his body. Instead, he activated the divine fire art and collected it into a corner of the space. When Xiaohua used the magic bottle to collect the innate true fire, the broken scroll swayed a few times in the space and flew back to the eye of the sea. It seemed to only want to see the 18 Arhat formation in good condition and did not pay any attention to Xiaohua in the space. There was an extremely large amount of innate true fire in the space. Although Xiaohua's magic bottle had many ordinary items, it was far from being as powerful as a water bottle. After collecting only 40% of it, it could not contain it anymore. Moreover, at the same time Xiaohua moved, the Buddhist light on the 4 walls of the space flickered and also collected the innate true fire into the crimson walls. After waiting for half a meal's time, the flames in the entire space completely disappeared. On the ground, there were hundreds of fire-colored crystals of different sizes. The only thing left was the pitch-black eye of the sea in front of Xiaohua. These fire-colored crystals were naturally condensed by the golden crow immortal slaying demonic formation. Xiaohua released his consciousness and collected them as well. These things were not inferior to the fire essence flame crystals that he had previously obtained. They were also excellent materials for Xiaohua's cultivation in the future. Xiaohua was already happy when he obtained the innate true fire. After collecting the crimson fire thread, Xiaohua was even more ecstatic. After collecting the fire essence flame crystals that were comparable to the fire essence flame crystals, Xiaohua was so happy that he almost jumped up. Moreover, the door to his home was right in front of him. He really could not help but feel excited. In order to prevent the things on his body from being destroyed by the 5 elements annihilation great formation, Xiaohua stored everything into the space. Then, he took a deep breath and rushed into the pitch-black eye of the sea that was condensed with an endless aura of death. However, just as Xiaohua rushed into the eye of the sea, before he could release his divine sense to see the situation in the eye of the sea, a faint Buddhist light appeared in front of him. That broken scroll actually blocked in front of Xiaohua. Although the Buddhist light was extremely faint, it was also extremely tough. Not only did it block Xiaohua, even his divine sense could not penetrate it. Xiaohua coldly snorted and released the Buddha Saraira that was protected by the innate divine restriction from his Naiwan palace. Even the exquisite derivation pagoda was carried out by the Buddha Saraira. When the Buddha Saraira came out, it also emitted a faint Buddhist light. The 2 Buddhist lights merged together as if they were of the same origin. They were actually indistinguishable. Looking at the broken scroll again, it actually surrendered without a fight and obediently fell into the hands of the Buddha Saraira, slowly rolling it up. Xiaohua looked at all of this in disbelief. He felt that it was extremely unimaginable. However, when the scroll touched the Buddha Saraira's hands, countless golden swan characters were born like butterflies and swarmed into the swan character mark between the Buddha Saraira's eyebrows. A kind of enlightenment appeared in Xiaohua's mind. Xiaohua almost groaned as he muttered to himself, Mahavarakana Buddha's decree. This Buddha's decree seems to be used to suppress. Before Xiaohua's voice fell, roar. After the Buddhist light of the Mahavarakana Buddha's decree, an incomparably angry dragon roar rushed out. A palm-sized scarlet-red dragon's soul flashed with flames that could melt the void and rushed toward Xiaohua's Buddha Saraira at an incomparable speed. It seemed that it was its unparalleled enemy. Damn it! Xiaohua was greatly anxious and was somewhat flustered. He wanted to throw away the Mahavarakana Buddha's decree in the Buddha Saraira's hands, but it was already too late. The Buddhist light disappeared along with the Buddha's decree. In the entire eye of the sea, there was only the Buddhist light of Xiaohua's Buddha Saraira. Even if the Buddha's decree was thrown away, the dragon soul that was suppressed by the Buddha's decree would still rush towards Xiaohua's Buddha Saraira. Return, Xiaohua did not say anything and immediately put the Buddha Saraira into his Naiwan palace. In an instant, the Buddhist light in the eye of the sea completely disappeared. Even a trace of Buddhist aura could not be seen. Unfortunately, Xiaohua's wishful thinking was wrong. That dragon soul was simply unreasonable. It flew straight at Xiaohua. You are too reasonable. Xiaohua hurriedly waved his hand and used heaven and earth sleeve. Boom! Almost like a clay chicken or pottery dog, Xiaohua's heaven and earth sleeve was immediately defeated the moment it touched the dragon soul. Damn it! Xiaohua immediately understood. Since the dragon soul was inside the eye of the sea and was suppressed by the Mahavairakana Buddha's decree, the person in the black and white chi did not dare to take it. Naturally, he was powerless to take it. How could he afford to provoke something that even others did not dare to provoke? Big brother. Xiaohua was almost about to cry. Little brother. Little brother seems to be a dragon vein too. Little brother just wants to go home. We originally came from the same root. Why are you so anxious to kill each other? Unfortunately, how could that dragon soul understand? Xiaohua's mournful image had just appeared when his body was immediately controlled by a power that he could not resist. Everything in his body was completely unable to move. That dragon's soul streaked across the pitch-black space of the eye of the sea and directly rushed into Xiaohua's body. Not only that. At the same time that the dragon soul rushed into Xiaohua's body, an endless hurricane was born behind the dragon soul. That hurricane was like a spinning sickle that scraped Xiaohua's skin and rushed into the space behind Xiaohua. Like a ghost's howl, the 18 Arhat formation flickered with a faint Buddhist light in this hurricane, trying to block it with all its might. Unfortunately, that Buddhist light gradually melted under the hurricane's sharp blades. In the time it took to eat a meal, the entire formation was broken through by the hurricane as if it was made of paper. The several acres of reefs were blown into the sky by the hurricane like gravel. The area that previously seemed to have no swimming fish or seaweed was now completely a huge abyss. The hurricane rushed out for no less than several hours, then suddenly changed direction and rushed into the eye of the sea with endless seawater. Huff! At the instant that the dragon's soul entered his body, Xiaohua felt a kind of blazing heat that he had never experienced before. Even when the origin of fire entered his body, it was not as fierce as this. His body was in pain as if it was about to melt. Actually, it was exactly what Xiaohua felt. Whether it was his hair or his Taoist robe, everything had already turned into nothingness. Only Xiaohua's phoenix body was still unyieldingly struggling. Chapter 31-34. Xiaohua felt dizzy and nauseous. The place that the dragon's soul went to was not a place, but Xiaohua's soul, where the mysterious dark clouds were. Little White, come out. Xiaohua did not dare to let the dragon's soul enter his soul. He quickly summoned Little White Dragon's soul. Roar. Actually, there was no need for Xiaohua to summon it. As soon as the dragon's soul entered its body, Little White Dragon had already sensed the danger. It let out a loud roar and rushed out of its body. Without waiting for the dragon's soul to crash into the mysterious dark clouds, its endless soul strands blocked the dragon's soul like the waves of the West Sea. The dragon's soul also roared. It was not afraid of Little White Dragon's soul at all. It bravely rushed into the soul strands. In an instant, thousands of soul strands were broken. Next to Little White Dragon's soul, Xiaohua's green primordial spirit suddenly appeared. With a point of his hand, countless soul strands again wrapped around the dragon's soul. Roar! The dragon's soul twisted slightly and also broke the soul strands. It did not seem to use much strength. Put it into the space. Xiaohua suddenly heard the green primordial spirit's voice. Thus, Xiaohua immediately released his mind, wanting to cover the dragon's soul. Unfortunately, the dragon's soul was many times heavier than Little White Dragon. Xiaohua's mind could not capture it at all. What do I do? Xiaohua was anxious. At this moment, his body was firmly suppressed by the dragon's soul. That soaring hurricane could not blow him away. Roar! At this moment, the meridians that were suppressed by an inexplicable power also roared and the dragon transformation art was activated. Go! Xiaohua immediately retracted his mind. The green primordial spirit controlled Little White Dragon's soul and waved the soul strands. It fought and retreated with the dragon soul and approached Xiaohua's meridians. The dragon soul seemed to be angry. It roared and broke the soul strands while biting Little White Dragon's soul. Even Xiaohua's primordial spirit was torn apart by the dragon soul. Who knows how long the chaotic battle lasted? Only when Little White Dragon's soul was very thin and Xiao Hua's green primordial spirit was also heavily injured, did the dragon's soul enter his meridians. The moment the dragon's soul entered his meridians, Xiao Hua's meridians trembled inexplicably. The primordial spirit that Xiao Hua had never noticed immediately flew out from his meridians. This primordial spirit looked very strange, as though it was a thin and long thread. This thread ran through his essence soul from head to toe. What was even stranger was that some parts of this thin line were clear, while others were blurry. There were even some parts that couldn't be seen at all. However, when the thin and long threads were put together, they formed the vague shape of a dragon. This dragon figure had a head and horns, and there were scales all over its body. When the scales flashed, there was a golden light flowing out. This dragon figure was also in the form of a human, and it was faintly discernible. However, when this primordial spirit appeared, it immediately rushed to the dragon's soul and fiercely bit it. Without waiting for the dragon's soul to react, it immediately hid back into his meridians. Moreover, the dragon transformation art quickly circulated again. However, this time, what was refined in his meridians wasn't the ordinary spiritual energy of heaven and earth, but this crimson-red dragon soul. Roar! The dragon soul seemed to understand the danger it was in. It roared and wanted to rush out of his meridians. That crimson-red flame violently burned Xiao Hua's meridians. Unfortunately, how could the meridians that had been refined by the fire origin be so easy to tear? It was already not bad that the crimson-red dragon soul could tear apart a part of his meridians. At the same time when the dragon soul tore apart his meridians, the dragon soul, under the urging of the dragon transformation art, involuntarily flowed in his meridians, just like the true qi that had been refined in his meridians before. Every inch that passed, the dragon soul would be melted by a bit. This melted bit was then swallowed by the primordial spirit in Xiao Hua's meridians. At this time, the dragon transformation art had already escaped from Xiao Hua's control. Under the urging of the primordial spirit in Xiao Hua's meridians, the dragon's soul rushed into Xiao Hua's already open meridians, and then rushed into his unopened meridians. Not only did it pass through his lower dantian, it even rushed into his middle dantian. In his middle dantian, the dragon's soul stayed even longer. And with the appearance of these meridians, the line between Xiao Hua's meridians and primordial spirit became even more obvious. However, after 360 cycles, the dragon's soul was already abnormally thin. At the end of the last cycle, the dragon's soul fell into his middle dantian. Xiao Hua's two primordial spirits and the little white dragon soul rushed in at the same time, as if they were besieging the dragon soul. Boom! A crack appeared on the dragon soul. Under the besiegement of the two primordial spirits and the little white dragon soul, the dragon soul actually shattered. Roar! The little white dragon's soul roared in ecstasy and rushed in front of the dragon's soul. Xiao Hua's two primordial spirits tactfully moved to the side. When the little white dragon opened its mouth, the head of the dragon's soul entered. As the dragon's soul was swallowed by the little white dragon, the power that was suppressing Xiao Hua immediately disappeared. Xiao Hua's body involuntarily moved along with the hurricane in the eye of the sea. However, at this time, the hurricane had already changed direction and was blowing towards the depths of the eye of the sea. Xiao Hua naturally followed the seawater and rushed into the depths of the sea. Not only that, at the moment the dragon soul's head disappeared, a seemingly incorporeal black dot appeared from where the dragon soul was broken. Roar! The little white dragon that was swallowing the dragon soul was extremely frightened. It let out a miserable cry and suddenly raised its head. It didn't even dare to swallow the dragon's soul anymore and hurriedly hid in other parts of the meridians. Xiao Hua's two primordial spirits were also panicking. It was as if their world was filled with an earthy yellow color. Moreover, that incomparably heavy and solid aura was born from that earthy yellow color, completely suppressing them. Earth origin. Xiao Hua couldn't help but groan as he understood in his heart. Within the eye of the sea, not only was there a Buddhist formation, there was also a demonic formation. These two formations were suppressing the cultivator in the black and white gas. This cultivator was clearly suppressed by the Buddhist and demonic experts in the eye of the sea. However, beneath this cultivator, there was still a supreme Buddhist order that suppressed the dragon's soul, and the purpose of suppressing the dragon's soul was to use the dragon's soul's fire to refine the essence of earth. Presumably, the cultivator in the black and white gas didn't know that the dragon's soul still had the earth origin. Otherwise, this cultivator absolutely wouldn't have hurriedly flown out of the eye of the sea and ignored the dragon's soul. Of course, it couldn't be ruled out that although the cultivator in the black and white gas was powerful, he didn't dare to provoke the fire dragon soul. After all, that cultivator only revealed a powerful divine sense and didn't reveal himself. Perhaps, that cultivator's situation was similar to the little white dragon that was in a hurry to swallow the dragon soul. However, no matter what the possibility was, this was the West Sea's lost treasure in name, but in reality, it was the location of the West Sea's eye of the sea. Under the protection of the 18 Arhat formation and the Golden Crow immortal slaying demonic formation, it was very unlikely for it to be broken by cultivators. Even if a cultivator had the ability to break the Buddhist and demonic formations, they would certainly consider whether or not they could make a move. However, in the eyes of Xiaohua, who didn't know the situation of the 3 continents and had the ability to break the demonic formations, all obstacles didn't exist. It was unknown how many years ago, but it was actually broken by Xiaohua, a cultivator that didn't belong to the 3 continents. Only a demonic formation was broken? Only an unknown cultivator that was suppressed in the eye of the sea was saved? Xiancheng didn't know, Xiaohua didn't know. Perhaps only the person who made the arrangements back then knew. Unfortunately, at this time, Xiaohua only realized that this black dot was the earth origin. An indescribable sense of danger arose in his heart. This sense of danger didn't appear even when Xiaohua encountered the so-called eye of the sea in the Guihe Sea. Could it be? Xiaohua turned pale with fright, thinking that this danger came from the earth origin. However, after a bit of comprehension, he couldn't help but stare blankly. The danger was actually outside. Xiaohua hastily wanted to release his divine sense and Buddhist consciousness, but unfortunately, both of them couldn't leave his body. Xiaohua looked at the pitch-black eye of the sea. Currently, he couldn't see anything clearly with his naked eyes. Moreover, his body was crazily rushing into the seemingly bottomless abyss along with waves of indescribable sobbing and a sound that was even stranger than the wailing of ghosts and howling of wolves. Apart from the unparalleled suction force, everything was completely different from the eye of the sea he encountered before. This couldn't help but make Xiaohua's heart tremble. Open, the Buddha Saraira in Xiaohua's Naiwen Palace uttered an incantation. His hands formed a Buddhist seal, then he hit the space between his eyebrows. The swastika symbol on the Saraira's forehead slowly rotated. A Buddhist light rushed into the space between Xiaohua's eyebrows. When the Buddhist light passed through, the soul imprint produced by the illusion breaker Dharma eye from before slowly opened. A silver eye gradually appeared. It was exactly the same as the Dharma eye in Xiaohua's left hand. This Dharma eye was cultivated by Xiaohua using the Dharma eye of the Buddhist sect, the secret technique of the ardent fire mountain, and the brain matter of Mo Zhao in the Black Forest. Although it hadn't reached large success and couldn't reach the realm of looking up into the 9 heavens and down into the 9 underworlds, it was just like the Dharma eye from before. It could see through the flaws of arrays, as well as the spiritual energy of heaven and earth that couldn't be seen by the naked eye and divine sense. Hiss, when Xiaohua's illusion breaker Dharma eye opened, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. In front of the eye of the sea, apart from the blue brilliance, there was also some gray brilliance. It was like spider silk and spider webs were blocking the blue brilliance. When the blue brilliance passed through the gray spider webs, it was cut into countless strands. It either disappeared, shrunk, or gathered together again. The blue brilliance couldn't be seen with a glance, and the gray spider webs and spider silk were even more endless. Spatial crack. Xiaohua couldn't help but groan. This was the second time he saw an invisible spatial crack besides Mingxi. Although this invisible spatial crack existed in Mingxi, It was extremely rare. Moreover, the space in that place was extremely large, so it could be avoided. But in this eye of the sea, there were so many spatial cracks and the space was so small. How could Xiaohua avoid them? I can only escape from the eye of the sea. This was the only way for Xiaohua to survive. However, he also knew that this was nothing more than wishful thinking. If ordinary escape techniques could pass through this eye of the sea, then wouldn't the suppressed cultivator have already escaped? Chapter 31-35. Just as Xiaohua had expected, the wall of the eye of the sea was extremely strange. Xiaohua activated his limited magic power, but he couldn't use any of the metal, wood, fire, or earth escape techniques. I'm going to die. Xiaohua couldn't help but feel sorrowful when he saw the spiderweb-like spatial cracks closing in on him. The road home is really full of thorns. I wonder if I can enter the space and accompany Xue Xue after I die? The crisis did not stop there. Within Xiaohua's meridians, after the earth origin was revealed, it was still somewhat different from the fire origin from before. Near the earth origin, layers of thick earth attribute world spirit energy were rapidly produced, and very soon, Xiaohua's meridians were completely blocked. Moreover, when this spiritual energy spread along his meridians, it passed through them and spread to other places. Wherever the earth attribute heaven and earth spiritual energy came in contact with it, it gave rise to a feeling of blockage. Damn it! Xiaohua was once again sorrowful. Even if there were no spatial cracks, I would still turn into a stone statue, right? Alright. At this critical moment, Xiaohua suddenly thought of the situation when he collected the fire origin. Looking at the incoming spatial cracks that were almost unavoidable, Xiaohua couldn't help but twist his body. It was a move of the Big Dipper God Fist. This move was Xiaohua's instinct. Even though Xiaohua's body was very difficult to control in this spiraling sea current, he still cleverly avoided the spatial cracks. The strangest thing was that when the Big Dipper God Fist was used, the earth origin was the same as the fire origin, it also stopped. The earth attribute heaven and earth spiritual energy that blocked his meridians and body no longer increased. Wonderful! Xiaohua saw that the Big Dipper God Fist was effective, and his desire to live was immediately born. Without thinking about anything else, he opened his Dharma eyes and carefully looked at the spatial cracks coming one after another. Then, he used the Big Dipper God Fist one move after another. Following the use of the Big Dipper God Fist, the earth origin moved again and rushed into Xiaohua's bones at an extremely fast speed. Hiss! The pain of having his bones fused together and being separated from Xiaohua's body appeared again. Along with the movement of the earth origin, it attacked Xiaohua bit by bit. Just like before, the pain caused Xiaohua's limbs to go numb and his entire body to tremble. At this moment, aside from the countless spider webs in his eyes, Xiaohua's entire heart was filled with a solemn yellow color. The dust that was as heavy as a mountain seemed to cover his heart and body. His arm, which originally had the strength of 10,000 caddies, was now about to solidify. However, Xiaohua also understood that he absolutely couldn't delay in the slightest. Not to mention that the earth quintessence could take his life, even the spatial rift was like a sharp sword that hung above his head. He persisted like this for an unknown amount of time. He didn't know how many spatial rifts he had broken through, and he didn't know how many times he had used the Big Dipper Divine Fist. The origin of earth continued to flow in Xiaohua's bones. With every inch it passed, Xiaohua's bones, which had already returned to their original gray color, would once again turn orange. This orange color was extremely bright and very uniform. In the end, all of Xiaohua's bones had already turned completely orange. This orange color was very gorgeous and revealed an incomparable heaviness. Woo! A strange sound that resounded through the world came from the sea eye. At this moment, Xiaohua's Dharma eye was already extremely tired and could no longer open. However, before closing it, Xiaohua took one last look. In front of him was no longer an endless gray spider web, but billions of tiny gray dots. Every gray dot was the size of a thumb, and every gray dot was in the shape of a rotating vortex. This. Xiao Hua stopped using the Big Dipper divine fist. He was astonished in his heart. What is this? Just as this astonishment appeared in his heart, a kind of uncontrollable fear arose in his heart. He couldn't help but look towards the depths of these billions of gray dots. Gradually, at a certain place, that gray dot was completely black. This pitch-black dot was wriggling like millions of maggots. It was extremely strange. However, before Xiao Hua could take a closer look, countless attacks that were 10 times more tyrannical than Xiao Hua's soul stab rushed towards him like a violent storm. A rumbling sound came from Xiao Hua's Naiwen palace. Xiao Hua screamed and immediately fainted. The innate divine restrictions outside his Naiwen palace emitted a faint golden light. The 360 innate divine restrictions slowly rotated. Those attacks that were similar to Soul Stab, but were countless times more powerful than Soul Stab, were like a torrential downpour hitting a hard rock. However, they couldn't cause any damage to the rock. This kind of situation only happened to Xiao Hua. If it was any other cultivator, even if they had reached the tribulation passing stage, if they didn't have a special spiritual treasure or even a heaven spiritual treasure, it would be difficult for them to escape death. However, even if it was Xiao Hua who had escaped this calamity, his Big Dipper divine fist stopped. The earth origin came out from his bones again. Endless earth spiritual qi once again filled Xiao Hua's body and meridians. Moreover, Xiao Hua's body was like a fallen leaf, rapidly shrinking. He casually floated into the billions of gray dots and disappeared. When Xiao Hua's body fell into the gray dots, Little White Dragon's soul and Xiao Hua's 2 primordial spirits that were hidden in his meridians moved again. Little White Dragon hurriedly flew out. It opened its mouth and swallowed the rest of the dragon's soul. Then, it roared loudly. Sparkling lights appeared on the dragon's body. Countless strange runes appeared on the dragon's body. Little White Dragon's soul gradually grew bigger. Wu, Xiao Hua's green primordial spirit made a very strange sound. It waved its soul strand as if it was reminding Little White Dragon. Then, the 2 primordial spirits looked at the earth origin in his bones and hurriedly rushed into Xiao Hua's mysterious dark clouds. After the 2 primordial spirits left, Xiao Hua's dragon-shaped primordial spirit looked at the orange color in his bones. It seemed to be thinking about something. Then, its body suddenly turned into a line and hid in his meridians. The dragon transformation art was activated again. The blocked meridians were gradually unblocked. Spinning crazily. Xiao Hua's body fell into the gray dots. This was the only ending. However, the earth origin in his body moved again after Little White Dragon's soul entered his meridians. The earth origin first passed through Xiao Hua's body. The 13200 primordial spirits that made up his body rapidly passed through. Everywhere it passed, it would condense a strand of yellow dust. After the dust was absorbed by the primordial spirits would turn orange. After these primordial spirits turned orange, they did not stop. Strand after strand of dust continued to form until these primordial spirits were blocked. Then, the earth origin seemed to be attracted by the dragon transformation art and entered his meridians again. Similar to the tempering of the fire origin, his meridians swelled inch by inch and became blocked inch by inch until his entire meridians were completely blocked. With his meridians blocked, the dragon transformation art could no longer be activated. The earth origin finally left his meridians and moved towards his heart. At this crucial moment, a faint star flame appeared in Xiao Hua's space. This star flame also had the appearance of Xiao Hua. However, the expression on its face was solemn. It was extremely different from the usual Xiao Hua's smiling face. Inside this star flame was the shape of a star core. Wasn't this star flame Xiao Hua's primordial spirit that had merged with the heavenly Tao starry sky? Compared to before, this star core had evolved again. It did not have the appearance of a single star, but a real starry sky. Within this starry sky, many stars were flashing with each other. This primordial spirit glanced at it and seemed to see the earth origin through space. Then, the heavenly Tao primordial spirit disappeared again. Then, in the entire space, a mysterious fluctuation suddenly appeared. This fluctuation passed through space and rushed into Xiaohua's body. As soon as the earth essence and fire essence came into contact with this fluctuation, they immediately produced similar fluctuations, and the previous boundless earth spirit chi was no longer produced. Thus, the earth origin sent out this fluctuation that resonated with the fluctuation in space. At the same time, it recklessly rushed into space. When the earth origin entered Xiaohua's space, the green-robed Xiaohua, who was refining pills, seemed to have thought of something. He hurriedly stood up and waved his hand. Go! The strand of spiritual fire that Xiaohu absorbed into his space immediately appeared in front of the earth origin. With a loud bang, a yellow spiritual fire appeared beside the pure scarlet spiritual fire. This yellow spiritual fire was as pure as before, and it was actually transparent. A dignified aura that surpassed all living things was emitted from this yellow spiritual fire that did not seem to be able to sense any heat. After the spiritual fire was ignited, there was a loud rumble. The entire space began to tremble. A kind of earth-shaking tremor appeared. However, just as this tremor appeared, Xiaohua's heavenly Tao primordial spirit appeared again. The moment this primordial spirit appeared, the earth-shaking tremor immediately stopped. The heavenly Tao primordial spirit opened its mouth and the earth origin entered it. Then, the heavenly Tao primordial spirit's star flame began to rapidly sway. Following this sway, the primordial spirit expanded like a cloud. The stars in its body gradually solidified and flew into the sky. It gradually merged with the starry sky behind the 9 suns. After a moment, a kind of joy, vitality, and will that took root was born. It filled the entire space and did not calm down for a long time. The earth origin was absorbed by Xiaohua when he was unconscious. As for himself, he fell into one of the millions of whirlpools in the Western Sea's eye. His whereabouts were unknown. Above the Western Sea, where the eye of the sea was located, thousands of miles away, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth was rampant. Strands and strands of dragon-like hurricanes rushed over from afar and crashed into the sea surface. Now, the place where there were no fish or seabirds within 100 miles had disappeared. A huge funnel with a radius of 1,000 miles had appeared in the Western Sea. This funnel was wide at the top and narrow at the bottom. Not only did the hurricanes rush in, even the surging seawater also rushed in with a roar. The seawater spiraled in and let out a deafening roar. The seabirds that flew by occasionally crashed into the funnel and immediately had their wings broken. No matter how hard they struggled, they could not escape the fate of destruction. They fell into the bottom of the funnel, the bottom of the abyss that seemed to be only a few feet deep. If the birds were like this, then there was no need to talk about the fish. Countless small fish with glowing scales seemed to swim over along with the abundant spiritual chi of heaven and earth. Then they fell into the whirlpool and could no longer struggle out. Of course, the fish that fell into the whirlpool all followed the current and did not know their fate in the future. There were even some strong fish that leaped up from the current as if to show off. However, this was only the last time they showed off. The fish were immediately sucked into the abyss and never looked back. Chapter 31-36. After an unknown amount of time, in the sky thousands of kilometers away from the abyss, a ring of crimson light suddenly appeared. Then, the light around the ring of crimson light turned into thousands of flowers. Before the flowers could fully appear, a golden light flashed from within the ring of crimson light and an enormous creature hundreds of feet long appeared out of thin air. This enormous creature that suddenly appeared was actually a dragon. This dragon's body was shining with golden light, and the source of the golden light was the foot-long scales that covered the dragon's body. These scales were somewhat similar to fish scales, but there were indescribable runes that faintly flashed on them. Between each scale, there were traces of crimson flames that flashed, and the edges of the flames were almost completely black. Behind the dragon's body, the butterfly-like tail actually had traces of purple. Now that the purple had just escaped from the gray void, it was already slightly dim. Roar, the moment the dragon appeared, its roar shook the 9 heavens. The dragon's roar was filled with anger. Looking at the dragon's head that was tens of feet long, the pair of crimson dragon horns were very eye-catching. Between the dragon horns was an extremely simple and unadorned dragon crown. The dragon crown gave off a faint golden light that covered most of the dragon's head, making it impossible to see the dragon's face. However, as the dragon roared, the golden light flashed as if it was breathing. Vaguely, one could see the ugly malevolence under the golden light. After the dragon roared angrily, it slightly waved its tail and the crimson light turned into a rainbow. The dragon followed the rainbow and charged toward the eye of the West Sea faster than a meteor. The distance of thousands of kilometers was covered in the blink of an eye. Woo! Seeing the situation at the eye of the sea, the dragon let out another angry roar. After the dragon circled above the eye of the West Sea for a while, the golden light around its body flashed and a figure with a dragon's head and a human's body appeared in the air. It wasn't right to call it a human's figure because this human's body was hidden under a bright yellow robe. Aside from a pair of arms that looked like human arms sticking out of the robe, what was exposed was still a pair of slender dragon claws. At the bottom of the robe was also a thick dragon tail. Like before, the dragon crown on the dragon horns still covered the face of the dragon-headed human's body, so it was impossible to see who this dragon-headed human was. Who is it? The dragon-headed humanoid roared angrily. His voice shook the sky and reverberated above the West Sea for a long time. This person clearly knew that there was no one around this time, but he still couldn't suppress the anger in his heart. Which damned person actually suppressed the fire dragon's soul, the inheritance of my West Sea Dragon Palace in the sea eye of my West Sea? Which one of you should be skinned alive? How dare you take away my fire dragon's soul? If this old man knew, I would definitely hack you into 1,000 pieces and grind your bones to dust. This dragon-headed humanoid figure was actually the West Sea Dragon Palace master. After saying that, the West Sea Dragon King still raised his hand slightly as if he had not vented his hatred. An indescribable ripple appeared from the dragon claw. Following this ripple, the seawater within 500 kilometers suddenly rose. It was as if a huge wave had suddenly rushed into the sky and lifted the West Sea Dragon King up. Then, with a loud boom, all the seawater crashed into the eye of the sea. Instantly, water splashed everywhere, and a huge crater appeared around the eye of the sea. Even the Dragon King of the West Sea's figure seemed a little ethereal in the thousands of feet of mist. However, it was only for half an hour. When the water splashed and the waves calmed down, all the seawater continued to pour into the eye of the sea. The West Sea's surface did not decrease at all. Everything was the same as before. At that moment, the West Sea Dragon King was standing even higher than before. The golden light under the dragon crown had already calmed down. I knew it. Back then, Baldy and Bien Niao wanted to borrow my sea eye of the West Sea to suppress that fellow. They definitely had other plans. I should not have agreed to it. The West Sea Dragon King muttered again. It's a pity that my royal brother has always been soft-hearted. He nodded before I even said anything. The grudge between the Taoists and the Buddhists originally had nothing to do with my dragon palace. Even if the Great Sage Temple was involved, my West Sea might not be willing to get involved. Now, that fellow actually did not get refined by the yin-yang illustration mirror. Instead, he escaped with the treasure. The most hateful thing is that I don't know if it's Baldy or Bien Niao, but he actually had designs on my fire dragon's soul. He even left it in the eye of the West Sea to suppress and refine it. The thing that I could not find even after searching the 3 continents and 4 seas was actually right under my nose. Really bullied me too much. With that, the West Sea Dragon King raged again. He raised his dragon claw again and countless amounts of seawater flowed out. However, this time, the seawater merely flowed up and then slowly retreated. It did not have the same might as before. This was because the West Sea Dragon King was filled with shock and confusion as he said, "However, this is also extremely strange. Which almighty expert broke the Buddhist and demonic arrays in the eye of the West Sea? It seems like even I don't dare to recklessly try that golden crow immortal slaying demonic array. It's a pity that the heavenly secrets here have already been overturned by that fellow. Even with my ability, I am unable to find any clues. If this person has the same origin as that fellow, I'm afraid the 3 continents are going to be in chaos again. I don't know if it's that Baldy or that Bien Niao. Their methods are so brilliant. Even if I sense the aura of the fire dragon's soul, I am unable to find any concrete evidence to interrogate them. Such a huge change happened in the eye of the West Sea, and the West Sea Patrol envoy actually did not sense it at all. They really deserve to die. Sigh, forget it. A good 4 seas banquet has been disrupted by someone. Royal Brother and Royal Brother should have reached the West Sea Dragon Palace by now. It's better to discuss it with them first. As the West Sea Dragon King spoke, his figure slowly flew away. The strong suction force of the eye of the sea had no effect on him at all. He flew past it as if he was taking a stroll in the park and gradually disappeared. The West Sea Dragon King had left, but the eye of the West Sea was still not calm. After an unknown period of time, a faint Buddhist light flashed out from a water droplet in the eye of the sea. Then, from an unknown location within the water droplet, a voice that was even softer than an ant's voice rang out. Amitba, that person has escaped in the end. The 3 continents are going to be in chaos again. However, who was the one who saved this person? How can there be such a person in the 3 continents? Could it be that that person has comprehended the Yin Yang Illustrated Handbook by himself? It's fine if that person left, but he just had to shatter my Buddhist edict. The fire dragon's soul that was suppressed by the Buddhist edict will definitely reveal its aura. At this moment, I am unable to calculate where the fire dragon's soul is. If it was taken away by Ao Hong, not only would it benefit the West Sea, it would also expose me. Yes, according to that person's character, there is nothing that he cannot take. He must have taken it away. How could he leave it to Ao Hong? However, that person has been suppressed by the Yin Yang Illustrated Handbook for so many years. How could he refine the Yin Yang Illustrated Handbook so easily? If he could reach that level at this moment, I am afraid he would have already attacked my Thunderclap Palace, right? How could he reverse Yin and Yang here and make me unable to do anything? That's strange. Someone else must have saved him. Forget it, Yin and Yang are already in chaos and karma is entangled. I am also helpless. Let's just listen to the analysis quietly. No matter how deep the karma is, there will be a chance for it to surface sooner or later. Just like this eye of the sea that is comparable to the 9 underworlds. Sigh, I would never have thought that it would actually reveal itself today. It is so many years earlier than I thought. At this moment, that faint Buddhist light suddenly flourished. A Buddha statue that was a few feet tall suddenly appeared in the eye of the sea. Of course, this Buddha statue disappeared in a flash. An extremely shocked voice came from the disappearing Buddha statue. Io, how is this possible? When did the future Buddha Lord descend? As the current Buddha Lord, why didn't I sense it at all? However, I have been worrying about this for more than 10,000 years. That future Buddha Lord has always been unable to appear in my nirvana. Why did I suddenly have a warning sign today? Could it be that the eye of the sea is greatly related to the future Buddha Lord? This seems to be impossible. This future Buddha Lord has actually descended, but where is he? Why did I only see a trace of it? When I look at it carefully, it is abnormally blurry and unclear. This is really strange. Since the future Buddha Lord has descended, where is my disciple? Where is he? Poor Ananda, I don't know where his obsession came from, but he actually wants to cultivate the 9 transformations golden body. I have already explained to him clearly that the 9 transformations golden body is to achieve Buddha fruit consecutively for 9 lifetimes. It is impossible to achieve 1 less lifetime. Moreover, as long as there is a trace of slack, the heavenly demon will enter the body. The good karma of the previous lifetimes will be tainted by the corresponding evil karma. In every life, the red lotus karmic fire would burn every inch of the golden body that he had cultivated, until the soul dissipates and no longer exists in this world. Not only that, every bodhisattva who cultivates the 9 transformations golden body not only has to cultivate Buddhism when he is alive, but also has to leave his obsession when he is in nirvana. Between life and death, he has to comprehend the true meaning of life and death. When he falls into the 6 paths of reincarnation, he has to keep the mirror clear. Only when he enters the Bodhi seed can he leave the Buddha route for the next lifetime. Under my protection, Ananda has now fully cultivated the 8 transformations golden body. Every time he reincarnates, he is also in my nirvana. Alas, in fact, I should have noticed it in his previous lifetime. The protection of each lifetime has caused rebellion in his heart. This kind of obsession is inevitable when the heavenly demon resides. I was only concerned about the future Buddha Lord and neglected this matter. In this lifetime, he must have used a secret technique when he was in the depths of samsara in his previous lifetime. Either he has reincarnated into other worlds, or he has already descended into the nirvana. He did not allow me to investigate and wanted to rely on his own obsession to cultivate. What a pity, fool, is cultivation really so simple? If it is like what you think, isn't this world full of immortals and Buddhas? You have already cultivated the 8 transformations golden body, why don't you understand it? Sometimes, knowing too much is not necessarily a good thing. Ananda, you are my disciple and the number 1 in many rumors. This is originally an advantage, but now it is a disaster. Chapter 31-37. Amitabha, this sovereign has also become obsessed. Even if the Buddha's shadow comes, that old dragon of the West Ocean will know. For no reason, he found a trace of truth. And this trace of truth is enough for him to follow the vine to the melon. Actually, this voice was so soft, who could see it? Even if that Buddha's shadow appeared for a moment, even if someone was really near the eye of the sea, they wouldn't be able to see it. However, after this soft voice, there was no more sound. Within the sea eye, there was only the roaring waves and the strange whimpering of the abyss. Xiaohua didn't expect that his trip to the eye of the West Ocean would attract so much attention. He also didn't know that in the eyes of these almighty beings, there was almost no way for him to hide. Fortunately, the cultivator wrapped in the Yin-Yang Illustrated Handbook did something for his safety. Otherwise, when Xiaohua just arrived at the boundary of the 3 continents, he would have suffered the same tragic fate as the Dawn Rain continent. At this moment, Xiaohua didn't think too much. He only felt a splitting headache, and his body was incomparably heavy. He couldn't even move. When he opened his eyes, everything before him was pitch black. There was also no sound in his ears. It was as if he was in an absolutely silent space. There seems to be a familiar feeling. Xiaohua resisted an indescribable fear and thought to himself. When he tried to send out his divine sense, although his Niwen palace was protected by the innate divine restriction, his divine sense seemed to be extremely exhausted and couldn't leave his body at all. Could it be that I have to drift for many years again? Although Xiaohua didn't know why he thought this, he couldn't help but have such a thought. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, even he was shocked because he didn't know where this thought had come from. Could it be that I've experienced this before? Xiaohua thought to himself as he looked at the abnormally pitch-black darkness. There wasn't even a bit of starlight. Then, Xiaohua tried to take a breath. Sure enough, there wasn't a trace of air in this pitch-black darkness. An ordinary person would definitely suffocate to death here. Damn it, I understand. Suddenly, Xiaohua came to a realization. When did I experience this? It must be that phoenix celestial body that was trapped in the void. Earlier, regardless of whether it was Dawn Rain continent or the West Ocean, I wasn't in space, so I was naturally unable to comprehend the comprehension of the phoenix Dharma body. Now that I'm trapped in the void, I can naturally communicate with the phoenix Dharma body that's also trapped in the void. I just don't know, when will I be able to meet the phoenix Dharma body? Xiaohua thought as he looked at the faintly discernible pitch black. He really wanted to know what the phoenix law body looked like at this moment. Boom! Just as Xiaohua was looking at the void, a huge explosion erupted in the darkness. A brilliant ray of sunlight pierced through the darkness like a sharp sword. The sunlight was so intense that Xiaohua couldn't help but close his eyes. Motherfucker, what kind of person is this? What kind of divine ability is this? He could actually break through the void? To be able to bring? Xiaohua turned pale with fright. When had he ever seen such an almighty being with such remarkable abilities? Even the Empress of the 10,000 Demon Realm and Old Wu of the Huda Stronghold couldn't have such magical powers, right? Master, there's actually someone inside. An extremely simple and honest voice rang out in the sunlight. Ah? What kind of situation is this? Xiaohua was stunned. He narrowed his eyes and looked around. He saw the astonished expression of a young man who wasn't even 20 years old. This expression was even more astonished than Xiaohua's. Before Xiaohua could move his gaze away from this young man's face, on the other side of the young man, a lean face suddenly appeared and landed on Xiaohua's face. His skinny face was full of wrinkles, and his two turbid eyes flashed with a trace of craftiness. On his shriveled lips, there was a small white beard that drooped down from the corner of his mouth like a rat's tail. What was special was that between those cracked lips, there were a few large yellow and black teeth swaying in front of Xiaohua's eyes. A kind of stench rushed out from behind those teeth. Xiaohua almost instantly stopped breathing. However, that shocked gaze still showed in his eyes. He didn't dare to believe that an almighty being who could break through the void actually had such a wretched appearance. Sure enough, and he's still alive. A slightly hoarse voice that seemed to have experienced the vicissitudes of life also shouted out in surprise. The old man's eyes, which seemed to be extremely astute, quickly turned in surprise and astonishment. Moreover, a faint divine sense subtly swept toward Xiaohua. Xiaohua frowned. This old man's cultivation clearly didn't match Xiaohua's expectations. However, not only was Xiaohua unable to move his body, his four limbs were soft and didn't have a trace of strength. His gaze could only see the blue sky above the two people's heads and the leisurely white clouds in the sky, but he couldn't see anything else. Soul sense. Xiaohua, who had never placed any hope in weak soul sense, suddenly woke up and hurriedly released his soul sense. When Xiaohua saw the situation he was in, he couldn't help but bitterly smile. Where did the void come from? Where did the void come from? Right now, he was just inside a large yellow crystal. His body was embedded in it, and he couldn't move at all. Moreover, his body was currently naked, without an inch of clothing. However, the crystal covered most of his body, so there was nothing particularly embarrassing about it. What the old man or the young man had broken was naturally the yellow crystal. How could it be the void? That's not right. Xiaohua was disappointed, but he suddenly woke up. This old man seems to be wearing a Taoist robe. Moreover, he's speaking in the Taoist language. Thinking of this, Xiaohua hurriedly shouted, "Fellow Taoist, is this the country of Xi?" "Nonsense, of course it's the country of Xi." The old man's divine sense swept over Xiaohua's body. When he didn't see any magic power, he unhappily raised his eyebrows and coldly said, "However, you don't know magic, so you don't have the qualifications to call me fellow Taoist." Hee. Xiaohua laughed. That laugh was really brilliant and happy. That's right, for no reason, he passed through the eye of the Guihe Sea and actually entered the spatial meridian. The spatial meridian's natural formation not only killed the two middle nascent soul stage cultivators, it also broke the seal on his Naiwan Palace and middle Dantian. Although he lost his gold core and Buddha's Saraira for no reason, he had been in seclusion for more than 100 years. In that strange realm, he also obtained a pile of fire essence flame crystals and the origin of earth. Especially, he also obtained the Mahavairakana Buddhist edict and the fire dragon soul. These things couldn't be obtained in the Dawn Rain continent. These things were hidden in the eye of the West Ocean. Xiaohua didn't need to think too much. They must be related to some ancient secrets. If he took them, wouldn't it be best if no one knew? However, not to mention the person inside the black and white cloud, even the West Ocean Patrol Deputy Inspector Xian Qing knew about it. Maybe one day it would be leaked out. At that time, he would definitely be hunted down. At that time, the hunt would be much more severe than the two middle nascent soul stage cultivators. Now, he had unexpectedly returned to the Dawn Rain continent without a hitch. How could those powerful cultivators chase him here? He could just treat these 100 years as a dream or a long period of seclusion. In short, everything was over. The current Xiaohua was like an unsheathed flying sword. Wherever the sword's light pointed would be the grudges that others should repay. Unfortunately, just as Xiaohua's blood was boiling, the old man's words were like a bucket of ice water splashed on Xiaohua's head. "Nya, hurry up and dig this guy out of the stone. Find him some clothes to wear." This old man picked him up with great difficulty from the mountain and spent a lot of effort. Make him work to repay his debt. The old man very indifferently shifted his gaze away from Xiaohua's body. He only greedily looked at the crystal on Xiaohua's body. It seemed that the crystal was much more valuable than Xiaohua. He then instructed, "Moreover, it's already late. Immortal Town's Minister Lu is still waiting for us to perform a ritual for him at night. We must not delay it. Otherwise, he will have to find the bald donkey from Shaojin Temple in the future." The old man spoke very quickly. In the middle, there were some words that Xiaohua couldn't understand. It was extremely similar to what Su Zhuoyang said. However, the ritual, bald donkey and other words of the Dao sect made Xiaohua stunned. And, when the young man called Yuanya heard this, he didn't say much and agreed. His right hand reached beside him and at the same time he raised his left hand. Xiaohua's eyes swept over. It was actually a hammer that was about the size of a small millstone in his lean hand. Boom! Without waiting for Xiaohua to ask or look more, Yuanya raised the hammer and smashed it on the crystal beside Xiaohua's ear. Xiaohua's ear buzzed and the fragments of the top-quality crystal also hit Xiaohua's face. However, these fragments didn't leave any scars on Xiaohua's face and immediately fell to the ground. Xiaohua's head could move now. He shook it left and right and asked, "This, brother, may I ask if this is the Dawn Rain continent?" Who knew that Yuanya looked at Xiaohua blankly and opened his mouth to say a few words that Xiaohua couldn't understand. This is bad. At this moment, Xiaohua's heart went cold. He looked at the somewhat blank Yuanya and raised his head with some difficulty. He wanted to ask the old man what this place was. But suddenly he remembered something. That day, when he introduced himself to Chu Muhuan, Su Zhuoyang and the others, he said that he was from the country of Xi. Su Zhuoyang and the others also pointed out that there was indeed a country of Xi on the hidden immortal continent. They all thought that Xiaohua was a cultivator from the country of Xi on the hidden immortal continent. Xiaohua naturally knew that this country of Xi wasn't the other country of Xi. He smiled but didn't say anything. Today, Xiaohua also understood that the country of Xi that the old man spoke of wasn't the one he asked about. Xiaohua was miserable and didn't feel like asking anymore. Chapter 31-38. Master. Yuanya raised his head and shouted again, as if he wanted to say something. Xiaohua understood these two words, and his heart ached again. He hadn't heard the word master for a long time, and he couldn't help but think of Wu Hai. He thought of everything Wu Hai had done for him. Although Wu Hai was now a soul, and as the second soul in the space, his future was second only to Xue Xue, but he was no longer a living person. However, the old man seemed to be like Wu Hai and didn't care about Yuanya at all. He didn't even answer him. Yuanya seemed to be used to all this, and when he shouted and didn't receive any response, he raised his hammer again and hammered Xiaohua out of the earth-yellow crystal. It had to be said that Yuanya's craftsmanship was really good, and it wasn't inferior to Ba Ding's skill. The earth-yellow crystal was abnormally solid, and Yuanya probably used a sledgehammer to hammer Xiaohua out of the crystal more than 100 times. Except for the first hammer, which Yuanya didn't know Xiaohua was inside, the other 100 hammers were very careful and didn't touch Xiaohua's skin at all. So much so that Yuanya even carefully left some uncut marks on Xiaohua's waist. After Xiaohua's legs could move again, Yuanya took out a shabby Taoist robe and handed it to Xiaohua. Then he turned around and left. The Taoist robe was very shabby, but it was washed clean and didn't have any unpleasant smell. Xiaohua glanced at it, and with some difficulty, he raised his hand and removed the remaining layer of crystal on his body and put on the Taoist robe. Xiaohua was tall and thin, far taller than Yuan Ya and the old man. When he wore the Taoist robe, his hands, arms, legs, and feet were exposed a lot. "AI, what's going on?" Xiaohua just raised his hand, and he felt his arm go numb, as if his arm was extremely heavy. Even when he slightly raised his leg was extremely heavy, and he couldn't move it at all. After trying to take a few seemingly stiff steps, Xiaohua understood in his heart. The earth origin was different from the fire origin. Before Xiaohua lost consciousness, it had already produced a lot of earth attribute spiritual energy, completely blocking Xiaohua's meridians and body. If there was no accident, it should be the extremely pure earth attribute spiritual energy within Xiaohua's body that caused Xiaohua's body to be so heavy and stiff. This earth element energy is directly produced by the earth essence, just like the earth crystal Yao milk, or even pure. As long as I can refine this energy, my cultivation will definitely reach a higher level. The toughness of his body and meridians is also extraordinary. After he understood, Xiaohua rejoiced in his heart. Not only was this not a calamity, it could even be said to be an opportunity. Speaking of the calamity, Xiaohua looked at the crystal stones on the ground. Obviously, these were also things that had spilled out from his body. If there was any danger in the tiny whirlpool, these crystal stones would protect him. If this is the Shi country of the hidden immortal continent, it should be on the opposite side of the Western Sea, in the east direction. It was millions of miles away from the eye of the West Ocean. That sea, oh my goodness, it's really powerful. Xiaohua inwardly clicked his tongue. However, this place might not necessarily be the state of Shi of the hidden immortal continent. This Xiao had better seize this opportunity to successfully master the clear eyes technique. If I learn the language of the 3 continents as soon as possible, I won't have to go through so much trouble. Soon after, Xiaohua heard the sound of footsteps again. It was Yuanya walking over. Seeing that Xiaohua had already put on his Taoist robe, Yuanya bared his teeth and smiled at Xiaohua. Yuanya was a young man around 20 years old. Apart from his somewhat dark skin, somewhat sparse hair, and some scars on his face, it could be said that he was an extremely handsome young man. In particular, Yuanya's smile was very infectious. When he smiled, his round eyes overflowed with a kind of intimacy, causing people to feel a kind of intimacy for no reason. However, the scars on Yuanya's face were a bit more numerous, and some of them were even especially deep. All of a sudden, his handsomeness was shaved off a bit. Moreover, when Yuanya wasn't smiling, his eyes would occasionally flash with a kind of vigilance, and even a kind of threat, causing people to feel a chill in their heart. This caused Xiaohua to be very puzzled. He didn't understand why 2 different feelings were so obvious when a person was in a different mood. After Yuanya finished smiling, the trace of fierceness in his eyes faintly flashed, and he said a few more words. Unfortunately, Xiaohua only understood a few words, but he didn't understand the entire sentence. Xiaohua helplessly shook his head. Even shaking his head made Xiaohua feel that it was somewhat difficult. Yuanya also didn't find it strange. He waved his hand at Xiaohua, pointed at the crystal fragments on the ground, picked up a skull-sized crystal, and walked away first. Xiaohua understood, so he also bent down with difficulty. He wanted to pick up a large crystal, but after trying, his arms were really sore and powerless. He could only bitterly smile, picked up 2 fist-sized crystals, and held them in his hands. Step by step, he followed Yuanya up the slope. Xiaohua's location was on one side of a steep mountain road. It was a flat land several zhang in size. Below this flat land was about 10 zhang in size. It was the end of the mountain road, and there were some people on the road. On the other side of the road, about half a li away, there was a large river that one couldn't see the end of. The large river was surging with waves, and the water was very turbulent. Xiaohua followed Yuanya up the slope and walked onto the mountain road. He looked up and saw that at the end of the mountain road, about 10 zhang in size, there was a small building. The faint blue bricks and blue tiles were hidden between the green pines and green cypress trees. looking at the building in the distance, then looking at the mountain road under his feet, and then looking at Yuanya who was walking along the mountain road, Xiaohua understood that Yuanya wanted to move the crystal into the building. See, Xiaohua unconsciously sucked in a breath of cold air. If it was a normal day, not to mention Zhang, even if it was Zhang, Xiaohua wouldn't be afraid. Not to mention flying, even walking wouldn't be a problem. But today was different. His meridians and body were filled with earth crystal Yao milk, and it was extremely heavy. If he climbed another Zhang, wouldn't he be tired to death? Go quickly, what are you dawdling for? The old man's impatient words came from behind Xiaohua. When he saw the 2 fist-sized crystals in Xiaohua's hands, he sneered again. One look and I can tell that you're not an honest person. You actually know how to slack off. Why did they send you here? Remember, this is an opportunity that this old man gave you. You paid such a big price. If you want to complete the mission, you have to work honestly. If you're so negligent, when will you be able to move these crystals into the Taoist temple? If other people know about these things, not to mention this old man, even you won't be able to live. And if you don't move these crystals into the Taoist temple today, don't think about eating dinner. After saying that, without waiting for Xiaohua to reply, the old man hurriedly walked past Xiaohua and hurriedly walked away. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. This old man's words were the exact opposite of Yuan Ye's. He could understand most of it, and only a small part of it he didn't know. Of course, he could still understand the main meaning. Did this person make a mistake? What mission? What? He seems to suspect that I deliberately approached him. Also, what is a Taoist temple? Xiaohua's heart was filled with doubts. He was also curious about the old man and Yuanya. Forget it, I can't go anywhere. Why don't I just stay here? First, I'll refine the earth crystal Yao milk in my meridians and body. When I regain my freedom, I'll go to paradise. Xiaohua thought and felt relieved. Step by step, he walked towards the Taoist temple. With every step, he circulated the dragon transformation incantation and heavenly infusion technique in his body. Just as Xiaohua circulated these 2 secret techniques, he discovered that not only had the heavenly infusion technique entered a new stage, even the dragon transformation incantation, which had been dormant for a long time, had entered the 2nd stage of cultivation. Xiaohua was overjoyed. He carefully sensed the changes. After the dragon transformation incantation and heavenly infusion technique entered the 2nd stage of cultivation, there were obvious changes. Previously, no matter which secret technique it was, they all refined the spiritual energy and turned it into true qi or even true essence for the dantian and golden core to use. Now, the 2 secret techniques were also refining the spiritual energy. However, the spiritual energy did not flow into the meridians and dantian. Instead, it was used by the meridians and body. In other words, the dragon transformation incantation was used to refine the meridians, while the heavenly infusion technique was used to refine the body. Good, Xiaohua was even more delighted. This dragon transformation incantation is used by Yao cultivators to transform into dragons. When cultivated to the extreme, I can definitely transform into a dragon. I don't really need to transform my meridians into dragons. However, if I can open up all the meridians in my body and refine them into a whole, connecting my middle and lower dantian, wouldn't my cultivation reach a whole new level? Moreover, although I've been refining my body, I always feel that it's weak. With the heavenly infusion technique, won't my body be strengthened? Thinking about what happened to Su Zhuoyang and the others, the body is really important in the 3 continents. Xiaohua's idea was extremely good. He could take advantage of this opportunity to cultivate. However, it was extremely difficult to do it. Without divine will and Buddhist awareness, without true energy and true essence, relying only on the 2 secret techniques to completely block the meridians and body, it would be difficult to complete the earth crystal Yao milk if one did not have great willpower. Xiaohua was either stingy or easily soft-hearted. However, his biggest advantage was his willpower. Once he set his mind on something, he would always be able to do it to the extreme. Step by step, he walked to the middle of the mountain path. Yuanya had already turned around and went straight down. His meridians and body had finally refined the first strand of spiritual energy. This spiritual energy was very strange. It was not ordinary true energy. Instead, it was a kind of indescribable strand. It easily entered the meridians and body and could no longer be found. Seeing Xiao Hua holding 2 crystals in his hands and walking with such difficulty, Yuanya frowned. However, he did not say anything. When Xiao Hua was about to reach the Taoist temple, Yuanya caught up with him again. However, he was carrying a crystal that was about the same size as his hammer on his shoulder. Not bad, this kid has some strength. Xiao Hua glanced at him and praised in his heart. Chapter 31-39. Yuanya quickly passed Xiao Hua. When Xiao Hua arrived in front of the Taoist temple, Yuanya quickly walked out of the Taoist temple and walked down the mountain path. When Yuanya walked past him, Xiao Hua raised his head and carefully looked at the Taoist temple that the old man had mentioned. This Taoist temple was extremely dilapidated. It was far from the green bricks and green tiles that Xiao Hua had seen from afar. The so-called beauty came from a distance, and it was also because of the greens surrounding the Taoist temple. At the front of the Taoist temple was a small dilapidated decorated archway. The decorated archway was only a few feet wide and 2 feet tall. There was no color on it, only black stains and spots of rust from the wind and rain. Directly above the decorated archway was an even more dilapidated plaque. The writing on it was abnormally blurry. Xiao Hua looked at it a few times, but he couldn't tell what was written. Behind the decorated archway was a small courtyard. There was a door that was a few feet shorter than the decorated archway. At this time, the door was half closed. On the red wooden door, there were a few broken gaps that let in some light. Because of the withered paint, it was like the scales of a fish, densely packed together. Xiao Hua pushed open the wooden door, making a sound. The door's axle clearly hadn't been oiled for a long time. Behind the wooden door was a screen wall that had almost collapsed. However, it blocked Xiao Hua's line of sight, so he couldn't see the situation in the courtyard. When Xiao Hua turned around the screen wall and saw everything inside the Taoist temple, he couldn't help but sigh. This Taoist temple was only a few dozen feet tall. In the courtyard, there was a rather large pine tree that took up most of the courtyard. Behind the pine tree was a main hall. Inside, there was a strange statue. This statue was 3 feet tall and only had half a face. It had a green face and red lips. It seemed to be holding a treasured sword in its hand, but only the sword hilt remained. This statue was the same as the wooden door at the mountain gate. The painted sculptures around it had fallen off, revealing many parts of the black-gray wood. In front of the statue was a small table with 3 fist-sized red candles. However, at this time, these red candles were extinguished and not lit. In front of the table were 2 praying mats. One was placed in the center, and the other was slightly behind, far away from the statue. On the west side of the main hall was a small hall. Unfortunately, there was no statue inside, only a table and half a broken red candle. There were rooms on both sides of the main hall. In the west wing, there were several statues enshrined from north to south. Unfortunately, the statues were much more damaged than those in the main hall. It was almost impossible to tell what the statues looked like. There weren't any statues in the east wing. Instead, it was a clean living quarters. At this moment, the old man was busily pacing back and forth inside. From time to time, there would be some crisp sounds of bells ringing out. Xiao Hua scanned the room with his soul sense. He knew that Yuanya had placed the crystals around the worn-out statues in the west wing. Xiao Hua slowly walked over to the west wing and tossed the crystals inside. Then, Xiao Hua thought for a moment, turned around and walked out of the west wing. He was about to walk out of the Taoist temple to get the crystal. At this moment, a dang-dang sound, a strange sound, and footsteps came from the west wing. Xiao Hua looked up and saw the old man walking out of the room. Seeing the old man's attire, Xiao Hua was stunned. The old man had already changed into a new Taoist robe. On his head, there was a hat that looked like a Taoist crown. Unfortunately, the color of the hat was different from the Taoist robe. It looked a bit awkward. The old man was holding 2 things in his hands. In his left hand was a bell wrapped in velvet, which made no sound. In his right hand was a bamboo pole more than 10 feet long. On the top of the bamboo pole was a small brown cloth banner with the word Tao written on it. The strange sound came from the bamboo pole hitting the ground. As for the old man's body, other than a yellow cloth bag on his left shoulder, there was also a peachwood sword on his back. The old man saw that Xiaohua was still standing in the courtyard and snorted. The bamboo pole paused for a moment before he said, "This old man is going to take Yuanya out. Today, you will move those stones from the foot of the mountain to here. Remember, you are not allowed to eat until you finish moving them." Dao. Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was a dignified cultivator. Although he had fallen into a difficult situation, but how could he rely on moving stones to make a living? Besides, did he know this old man? Even if he wanted to make a living, was there a need to stay in this cramped Taoist temple? Besides, he had come out of the spirit stone without any injuries. Moreover, he was still alive. Clearly, he was a different person. Why couldn't this old man see him? On the contrary, he didn't seem to be afraid of him. Not only was he not respectful, he even seemed to loathe him. He only said that he had some task to complete. Unfortunately, just as Xiaohua said the word Dao, the old man impatiently waved his hand and said, "Call this old man a Taoist priest? I don't know where you learned this Taoist from and where you come from. You inexplicably let this old man run into you. Really unlucky." After he finished speaking, he didn't wait for Xiaohua to reply and walked out of the Taoist temple with large strides. Looking at the old man's appearance, he had a rather imposing appearance. Xiaohua opened his mouth, but when he heard the last few words of this so-called Taoist priest that he couldn't understand, he still shook his head with a bitter smile. "Forget it. No matter what, he said that he hacked me out of the spirit stone. There should be some karma. No matter how the old man misunderstands, this Xiao will first move the stones. After I finish moving the stones, this Xiao will leave." Thinking this, Xiaohua slowly moved step by step to the dilapidated entrance of the Taoist temple. This incomparably heavy body really made Xiaohua uncomfortable. Compared to the carefree and unrestrained feeling he had in the past, it was really like heaven and earth. Xiaohua had just moved out of the mountain gate when he heard the old man in the distance shouting, Hurry, hurry, throw this thing to that kid." The matter of Minister Lu's family. This old man thought for a moment and decided that it would be better to go there as soon as possible. He is an influential person in town. It's rare for him to send someone 3 days early to invite this old man. No matter what, this old man has to give him some face, right? "Yes, master." In this short period of time, Yuanya had already reached 30% of the mountain path. Looking at his master who was rushing towards him, he agreed without hesitation. Xiaohua actually understood Yuanya's words. The corner of his mouth curled up into a smile. In his mind, the honest and considerate face of Xiang Yang unconsciously appeared. This master and disciple pair is actually somewhat interesting. Xiaohua originally had the intention to leave, but his brows relaxed again. He said with a smile, "Sending Lu to paradise is actually not that urgent. As the ancient saying goes, if a worker wants to do a good job, he must first sharpen his tools. This Xiao is currently struggling to move forward. Even if I have the heart, I am powerless. Refining the earth crystal Yao milk in my body would take several years. Rather than hiding in the immortal cave and bitterly cultivating, it would be better to follow this master and disciple pair and see the hearts of the people in this ancient town. Reading about the various states of the hidden immortal continent might be somewhat beneficial for pregnancy." Speaking of pregnancy, Xiaohua's face became somewhat gloomy again. It seems that he has never heard of a cultivator who lost their golden core while cultivating, right? Right now, although he had just started to refine the earth crystal Yao milk, Xiaohua felt that there would still be a small amount of true qi flowing into his lower dantian. However, the invisible golden core in his lower dantian was like a bottomless pool. No matter how much true qi and true essence entered, it would not be able to contain it. Xiaohua was afraid that one day, this golden core would mysteriously explode. Of course, that step seems to be too early. Xiaohua thought as he slowly walked down the mountain path. However, this mountain path has always been easy to go up, but difficult to go down. Right now, Xiaohua's hands and feet were not easy to control. Just as he walked a few steps, his foot slipped, and a majestic late-stage foundation establishment cultivator with half a foot in the nascent soul realm actually rolled down the mountain path like a gourd. Damn it, really shameful. Xiaohua almost cried out. He was almost 200 years old, yet he still made a fool of himself like this. And fortunately, there will be no one on this mountain path. That so-called Taoist priest and Yunya also just left. At worst, he would roll down halfway and stop at the side of the road. At worst, he would fall into the river again. He was not even afraid of the magnificent West Sea. Why would he be afraid of this? This matter was also a coincidence. Xiaohua's rolling gourd was not as weak as Xiaohua thought. He actually kept rolling down without stopping at all. It seemed that if nothing unexpected happened, he would really roll down the mountain path at the bottom of the mountain. Hoo! Just when Xiaohua was feeling extremely depressed and was thinking about how to stop, he heard a roar that sounded like a wild beast. Immediately after, Xiaohua felt a huge force blocking him. Xiaohua's body was pushed down a few feet by this huge force before he finally stopped. When Xiaohua looked up, he saw that it was Yuanya who had just left. He did not know when he had returned. Yuanya used his hand to block himself, but his arm was cut a few feet on the ground and was already badly mutilated. "Are you okay?" Although Yuanya's words were short, Xiaohua did not understand. However, seeing the smile in Yuanya's eyes, as well as that trace of concern, Xiaohua's heart warmed. What he understood in his heart was that his body was covered in earth crystal Yao milk. If he felt incomparably heavy, then how heavy was his body? Of course, it could not be counted like this. However, even if it was not earth crystal Yao milk, how big was the force of his fall when he rolled down a few hundred feet? If Yuanya did not have great strength, perhaps he would also be pushed down the mountain path, right? Xiaohua shook his head slightly, indicating that he was fine. When Yuanya saw this, the concern on his face disappeared and returned to indifference. A kind of natural vigilance appeared in his eyes. Immediately after, Yuanya stretched out his hands and cut a few times on the mountain path. His hands were covered in dirt and dust. In front of Xiaohua, he rubbed his hands on his left and right arms. The dirt and dust really blocked the bleeding places. In a moment, the yellow dirt and dust turned brown and gradually condensed. Xiaohua was shocked. He had never thought that injuries could be treated like this. However, Yuanya did not pay attention to Xiaohua's shock. He rubbed his hands on his Taoist robe a few times, nimbly took out an oil bag from his bosom and stuffed it into Xiaohua's hands. Then, without saying anything, he ran down the mountain. What was special was that the place where Yuanya landed was not the real mountain path, but the surrounding mountain rocks and low thorns. However, looking at Yuanya's nimble hands and feet, he was more powerful than ordinary mountain beasts. Chapter 3140. This. Xiaohua lifted his leg and wanted to chase after Yuanya, but he felt the weight on his left leg and smiled bitterly again. He couldn't even walk properly. How could he chase after him? Xiaohua lowered his head and looked at the oil bag in his hand. Although Yuanya had rubbed off the dust on his hand, there were still a few dust stains on the oil bag. However, the dust stains couldn't hide the faint meat fragrance from the oil bag and Xiaohua's gratitude. Yes, it was a kind of gratitude. Although Xiaohua wouldn't eat the meat in the oil bag, he had accepted Yuanya's enthusiasm. Xiaohua slid down the mountain path. Although he wouldn't be injured and wouldn't lose his life, Yuanya didn't know that Yuanya had already saved Xiaohua's life. Xiaohua couldn't help but feel grateful. How interesting. Xiaohua smiled and opened the oil bag with interest. Inside was a coarse flatbread. Inside the flatbread were some vegetables that had lost their freshness and a piece of fatty meat. There were some black oil stains on the meat and it also didn't look fresh. Needless to say, Xiaohua knew that Yuanya must have been unwilling to eat this flatbread for a few days. Today, he actually left it for him. Xiaohua accepted Yuanya's kindness, but to let him eat this flatbread he really couldn't. Xiaohua thought for a moment, then wrapped the flatbread again and put it into his arms. Then, he walked to the flat slope not far from here and looked at the scattered crystals. He smiled and said, "These are more precious than the best quality spirit stones. Which one of them wouldn't be worth tens of thousands of silver taels? What kind of ritual is this for Minister Lu? By the way, what is the ritual?" Thinking, Xiaohua released his mind and put all the crystals into the space. Then, he pinched his chin and looked at the Taoist temple dozens of feet above. After thinking for a moment, he gave up the idea of using magic to fly up and carefully walked up step by step. After entering the small Taoist temple, Xiaohua walked to the west wing and threw out all of the crystals without missing a single one. Then he walked to the main hall and sat on the praying mat. He let out a long breath and then closed his eyes and sent his mind into the mysterious dark clouds. For some unknown reason, Xiaohua's divine sense was exhausted. Even the Buddha's consciousness that was protected by the innate divine restriction in his Naiwan palace was also exhausted. Although Xiaohua wanted to use his Buddha's consciousness to check on his jade eyes, he had to wait for his Buddha's consciousness to recover. Right now, Xiaohua could only rely on his soul sense and soul technique. Xiaohua needed to see how his primordial spirit, which had swallowed the fire dragon's soul, and how little white dragon's soul was doing. When Xiaohua's mind entered the mysterious dark clouds, he couldn't help but laugh wildly. Previously, after 100 years of bitter cultivation in the West Sea, his ninth heaven spirit origin had already reached the top of the abundant reality sky, but there was still a very short distance before he could break through to the abundant reality sky. At this time, Xiaohua's Yuan Xin and the little white dragon had already half submerged into the top of the abundant reality sky. The tens of thousands of soul strands had already entangled with the clouds at the top. Green light flickered, and inexplicable green seal characters rolled in the clouds. It seemed that he only needed a little bit of cultivation to break through to the meridian condensing realm. But that wasn't the most important thing. What made Xiaohua the happiest was Little White Dragon's soul. That day, when Little White Dragon was fighting the fire dragon's soul in the West Sea's eye, its body had already dimmed and was on the verge of dissipating. But now Little White Dragon's soul was abnormally condensed, no different from the true dragon's soul that Xiaohua had seen before. Moreover, Little White Dragon's body was no longer the same size as before in the abundant reality sky. Instead, it was incomparably huge, and looked to be at least several zhang thick and several thousand zhang long. Around Little White Dragon's body, the fine dragon scales were abnormally clear. There were strange patterns between each scale. Those patterns looked like runes, but they also looked like heaven runes and earth deeds. The mysteries behind them were not something Xiaohua could understand. However, there were also traces of fire between these patterns. This fire was abnormally red, and almost black. A scorching aura and an almost tangible dragon's might filled the entire abundant reality sky. Roar! Hearing Xiaohua's mind entering, Little White Dragon sensed it and let out a dragon roar. The entire abundant reality sky was resounding, and countless green seal characters fluttered in the air. Then, Little White Dragon rolled its dragon body and flew in front of Xiaohua in an incomparably vast manner. Following Little White Dragon was Xiaohua's primordial spirit that was comprehending soul cultivation. This primordial spirit was also different from before. Not to mention other things, just the size of several zhang was already the difference between heaven and earth compared to the previous size of several qi. It was just like a god standing in front of Jade Archive Xiaohua. Haha, at this time, Xiaohua's mind already had the appearance of Jade Archive Xiaohua. He laughed loudly as he looked at the dragon head that was much larger than him, and cupped his hands. Congratulations, fellow Taoist. Congratulations, your soul has finally condensed. Xiaohua! On the huge dragon head, Little White Dragon's appearance was extremely fierce, but its tone was still gentle. Call me Little White, I like it when you call me that. Jade Archive Xiaohua nodded, and then his body slowly expanded until it was the size of Little White Dragon's head. Then, he cupped his hands towards the other primordial spirit. Congratulations, fellow Taoist. Congratulations to you too. Xiaohua's primordial spirit also cupped his hands, his face expressionless as he replied. Jade Archive Xiaohua carefully sized up this primordial spirit, and found that the appearance of this primordial spirit was very clear. It was no different from him, but countless green seal scripts were rolling slowly in its eyes, and there were no human emotions in them. Moreover, the clothes of this primordial spirit were strange as well. It was not a Taoist robe, but rather similar to those worn by millions of soul cultivators in Meng Mountains. Although the clothes covered the soul cultivator's primordial spirit, in Jade Archive Xiaohua's eyes, he could see clearly that although the primordial spirit was condensed, there were still many flaws in it, and it was not complete. Perhaps only after completing the cultivation of the 9 heavens of spirit origin could this primordial spirit be truly condensed. Little White, after looking at the soul cultivator's primordial spirit, Xiaohua said to Little White Dragon's soul, "Now that your soul has condensed, what do you plan to do?" "Transform into a dragon." Little White Dragon said without hesitation, "Originally, I planned to use you to seize the body of a dragon, so that I could truly leave this place. But now that I've devoured the soul of a fire dragon, although it can fulfill my long-cherished wish of transforming into a dragon, it also brings with it difficulties. This dragon soul is a true dragon, and my soul is also a true dragon soul. An ordinary dragon's body can't bear a soul like mine, so the dragon's body can only collapse, and my soul can only dissipate along with it. The only thing I can do now is to see if the Dragon Clan has any secret arts that can allow me to truly transform into a dragon." "The Dragon Clan?" Jade Archive Xiaohua smiled wryly. "I've just arrived in the 3 continents, and I've never seen any Dragon Clan, let alone know if they have any secret arts that can allow you to transform into a dragon." "It doesn't matter," Little White Dragon replied. "Since I can encounter such an opportunity by your side, then transforming into a dragon will also bring me an opportunity. Even if I don't have such an opportunity, I'll still be free here. You don't have to be too troubled. It's best if I can encounter it, but it's fine if I can't." Jade Archive Xiaohua nodded, then asked, "Do you know where the Dragon Clan is? What secret arts do they have?" "I don't know yet." Little White Dragon shook his head. "Although this dragon soul contains the inheritance of a true dragon, I'm not a true dragon, so I can't obtain it. I can only slowly search for an opportunity. However, I know that the Dragon Clan must have a secret art that allows the dragon soul to transform into a dragon again." "Alright, I understand." Jade Archive Xiaohua nodded. "You can cultivate here. If there's an opportunity, I'll help you keep an eye out." "Many thanks." Little White Dragon didn't seem to be polite with Xiaohua. "By the way, this dragon transformation art." Jade Archive Xiaohua thought of something and asked, "Where did you get it? Also Yellow Flower Ridge and Dark Flower, what's going on?" "I'm sorry, Xiaohua." Little White Dragon's answer was beyond Xiaohua's expectations. "My memory was erased by someone, so the things you said are all blank in my memory. I only know that I was protecting the disciples of Yellow Flower Ridge, and I don't know anything else." Jade Archive Xiaohua was really shocked. He thought that Little White Dragon would give him a satisfactory answer. "Then, what about the cultivator who killed you? The murderer who killed my Yellow Flower Ridge?" Jade Archive Xiaohua asked again. "Don't tell me you don't know." "Of course I know." Little White Dragon immediately told him the whole story. Sure enough, although Jade Archive Xiaohua had never seen Sun Yunzi of Shanghua sect, Fairy Ingjuar of Xuanyan School and Reverend Lu Shi of Qiqiao sect, he had seen the images of Sun Yunzi and Reverend Lu Shi in Tongmu City. Since the nascent soul female cultivator who could be with them, who else could it be but Fairy Ingjuar? With your current cultivation, you are still no match for them. Little White Dragon said indifferently, "However, don't worry, after I transform into a dragon, I can help you kill the 3 of them." Jade Archive Xiaohua didn't comment. "You can cultivate here first. When you cultivate, I will also cultivate. Just give me a hand." "Alright." Little White Dragon nodded, and then hesitated slightly, whispering, "I have 2 things. I don't know if it's good news or bad news. Are you willing to listen?" "Say it." Jade Archive Xiaohua was stunned, and looked at Little White Dragon strangely. "What is it about?" "First of all," Little White Dragon said with some suspense, I see that there is also a primordial spirit in your meridians. How many primordial spirits do you have? If there are too many primordial spirits, there will definitely be conflicts, and it will be very troublesome in the future. I know this. Jade Archive Xiaohua nodded. Now that things have come to this, there is no way to regret it. Seeing that Xiaohua was unwilling to tell him too much, Little White Dragon didn't care, and continued, "But I see that your meridians also seem to have dragon chi, and that primordial spirit has also swallowed the soul of a true dragon. In my opinion, if you can find the secret technique of transforming into a dragon, you might as well transform your meridians into a dragon like me. I am now a soul, so it is difficult for me to transform into a dragon, but your meridians are much easier. Separating your meridians and primordial spirit from your body will only be good for you." Chapter 3141. How can that be? Xiaohua shook his head. Without meridians, how can I cultivate? This absolutely can't be done. Without meridians, why can't you cultivate? Forget it, this is your business, do as you wish. Little White Dragon said, I'm just giving you a suggestion. Xiaohua's idea of transforming one's meridians into a dragon was just a fleeting thought. He never thought that it would really be possible at this point. However, it was just as he said. Without meridians, how could the Dao Sect's mana and spells be used? Isn't my cultivation journey coming to an end? The path of transforming meridians into dragons. I really don't dare to try it. That's all, Xiaohua said. Also, Little White Dragon looked up at the clouds above its head and said, I don't know what kind of secret technique your soul is cultivating, but between these two grotto heavens, there seems to be an extremely powerful seal. This seal is enough to prevent your primordial spirit from breaking through to the next level. Ah? Xiaohua turned pale with fright. He really didn't expect that in addition to the seal in his Naiwen Palace and Dantian, there was another seal in his soul. Damn it, this is a seal in my soul. What kind of old monster did I offend? Xiaohua almost gnashed his teeth. If the old monster with the soul division sealed my Naiwen Palace and Danan, it's still acceptable. How can their magic power penetrate into my soul? They are Dao Sect's cultivators. But you don't have to worry. Little White Dragon said again, if it was before, I wouldn't be able to do anything. Now that I have the soul of a true dragon, the heavenly fire in my soul is enough to break this seal. I have nothing to do here, so I'll cultivate while helping you break the seal. Then I'll have to trouble you. Xiaohua bowed and thanked. You're too polite with me. Little White Dragon blinked his eyes, and a strange smile appeared on his fierce face. Hee hee, you wait for me to cultivate. I'm going out, I'm in some trouble now. Xiaohua laughed and left the mysterious clouds with Little White Dragon's dragon roar. However, after leaving the mysterious dark clouds, Xiaohua's mood was somewhat heavy. He didn't have the mood to return to the space and returned to his physical body. Motherfucker, other people's cultivation, even if it's filled with difficulties, at least it's safe. Who is the same as the Xiao? If it wasn't the Naiwen Palace that was sealed, then it was the Middle Dantian that was sealed. He had risked his life to remove the two seals, but now, a seal had appeared in his soul. In the end, does this even require people to cultivate? Xiaohua opened his eyes and looked at the sky that was starting to brighten in the west. He was truly speechless. This Xiao's Dantian was sealed because this Xiao cultivated the Carefree Heart Sutra in the past. As for the Naiwen Palace being sealed, I'm afraid it has something to do with the memories. Xiaohua frowned. But what's the reason for the seal in the soul? Could it be that this Xiao was also a soul cultivator in the past? What's more, to be able to place a seal in the soul, just how high of a cultivation level was that? Is it worth it for you to attack me? Forget it, forget it. What's the point of thinking so much? One step at a time. Eventually it will surface. Xiaohua shook his head and thought to himself. Right now, the biggest problem is to first refine the earth crystal Yao milk. It's best if I can move freely. Immediately, Xiaohua closed his eyes and meditated again. Time passed extremely quickly. Xiaohua only felt that in an instant, the sky had darkened. A burst of hurried footsteps came from outside the Taoist temple. Bang! The shabby small door was suddenly knocked open by someone. Xiaohua didn't release his soul sense. He originally thought that the unknown old man and Yuanya had returned. However, when he opened his eyes, he saw a middle-aged man wearing shabby clothes. His face was filled with grief as he staggered in. He didn't even look around as he knelt in front of the main hall. Bang! 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 He kowtowed towards the tattered statue in the main hall. His mouth was even muttering sorrowful cries. His voice was extremely muffled and indistinct. Xiaohua couldn't hear him clearly. Xiaohua didn't know if it was because the man's face was covered in tears or because it was already late, but there wasn't any light in the main hall. Therefore, he didn't see Xiaohua's figure at all. He kowtowed several times as if he was paying respects to Xiaohua. Xiaohua wanted to get up and avoid it, but clearly, his body was extremely heavy. How could he avoid it? Although I'm an ordinary person, this kowtow isn't something that can be casually accepted. Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He had cultivated Buddhism for a long time and had even comprehended the way of karma. He understood it very well. Unfortunately, this man was still crying and muttering. How could he know what he was saying? Knowing that it was impossible for the other party to understand even if he spoke, Xiaohua simply released his soul sense and swept it down the mountain. Sure enough, at the foot of the mountain, there were two young boys and girls. They were standing there and crying, not knowing what to do. In addition, there was also a woman lying there on the verge of death. She was already exhaling more than she was inhaling. Looking at the ragged clothes of the three people, Xiaohua instantly understood. This was definitely a poor and destitute family. The mother of the two children was ill, and the father of the two children brought her to see a doctor. Either they didn't have money, or the illness was too serious and the doctor couldn't help them. The family of four in despair passed by this small Taoist temple. Perhaps the father thought of this clay statue and came up to kowtow and ask for the clay statue's protection. Xiaohua couldn't bear to see this kind of grief. However, he didn't have any true essence at the moment. He could only rely on pulse reading techniques to diagnose the illness. But the problem was that he wasn't a clay statue. The other party might not believe him. Moreover, other people wouldn't understand his words. Looking at this woman's appearance, she might not be able to wait until Yuanya and that old man return. Maybe I can give it a try. Xiaohua pondered for a moment. He saw the man stand up, wipe his tears, and put on a strong face. He turned around and hurriedly left. Xiaohua immediately took out an ordinary parasol pill from his space. He divided it into two parts and waved his hand. It landed on the man's head. Xiaohua quietly leaned down and nestled under the statue's body. The man was stunned. He touched his head, then turned his head to look at the ground. He squatted down and used his hand to take out the parasol pill. But at this time, it was really dark. There was no moonlight. The Taoist temple was silent. Only the soft sound of the wind from the green pine tree could be heard. I am Taoist Master Xiao. I am moved by your piety. This pill will be used to save your wife. Quickly go. Xiaohua saw the man raise his eyes and look around the Taoist temple very strangely. He raised the parasol pill to his nose and sniffed it. Unexpectedly, he was about to throw it away. Of course, although Xiaohua didn't have any magic power, it was extremely easy for him to make his voice sound like a statue's. The man was greatly alarmed. He almost threw the parasol pill away. Although he didn't understand Xiaohua's words, he was also blessed with good fortune. He knew that this was a gift from the gods. He muttered something and used all his strength to kowtow a few more times. Only when his forehead was bleeding did he hastily run down the Taoist temple. Xiaohua naturally didn't feel at ease. He followed with his soul sense and saw the man put the parasol pill into the woman's mouth. Unfortunately, the man didn't wait for the woman to show any improvement. He carried the woman again. The two young children each pulled a corner of the man's clothes. The four of them hastily left. Xiaohua sighed and withdrew his soul sense. He himself didn't know whether this parasol pill would be useful to that woman or not. I'd better hurry and understand the language of the 3 continents. Xiaohua finally understood what was more important than refining the earth crystal Yao milk. After half a day of cultivation, the Buddha's soul sense in the Buddha's Saraira had already recovered a trace. Just this trace was already enough. Xiaohua immersed the Buddha's soul sense into his jade eyes and carefully examined it. Bang! After an unknown amount of time, it seemed like moonlight sprinkled in front of the Taoist temple. Through the green pine trees, the mottled moonlight fell in front of the main hall. The shabby mountain gate made a loud noise. A heavy footstep entered the Taoist temple. Xiaohua opened his eyes and saw a bloated figure walking in very steadily. When he carefully looked, Xiaohua didn't feel anything. That bloated figure was originally 2 people. But he saw that the old man's previously brand new Taoist robe was already somewhat torn. The Taoist crown on his head was already gone. The peachwood sword and bamboo pole were also gone. Only that cloth bag was slanted on Yuanya's shoulder. As for the old man himself, his thin body was leaning on Yuanya's shoulder. His face revealed a kind of sickly dark red. There was a large bruise above his right eye. He looked very dispirited. The old man was carried into the Taoist temple by Yuanya's shoulder. His feet didn't touch the ground at all. There were still some low muttering sounds coming from his mouth. His mouth emitted a kind of pungent smell of alcohol. He was unexpectedly drunk into a complete mess. After entering the Taoist temple, Yuanya threw the cloth bag and bamboo pole on the ground. He very quickly sent the old man to the east wing. There was no need to light a candle at all. In just a moment, the old man was served to sleep. Then, Yuanya walked out again. Those seemingly ordinary eyes in this night actually emitted a kind of extremely faint green light. Yuanya only took a glance at the Taoist temple and saw Xiaohua in the main hall. However, he didn't hurry to go to the main hall. Instead, he quickly walked to the west wing. After looking at the oil lamp, he looked at the crystal stones in the room. Then, with a strange expression, he raised the oil lamp and went to the main hall. In the main hall, Xiaohua was still sitting cross-legged. He looked at Yuanya with a smile. "You are hungry, right?" Yuanya put the oil lamp in front of the statue. He didn't light the candle in front of the statue. He looked at Xiaohua and asked in a low voice. Not hungry, Xiaohua just looked at the jade eyes. He originally wanted to answer. Unfortunately, his mind moved quickly, but his mouth was slow. Yuanya didn't wait for Xiaohua to speak. He stretched out his hand and carefully took out another oil bag from his bosom. He took out an already cold bun from inside and put it in his mouth. Then he handed the oil bag to Xiaohua. Chapter 3142. Seeing this, Xiaohua simply did not answer. He smiled and took the oil bun. Without using the light, Xiaohua already saw that there were 2 identical buns inside. Xiaohua laughed. He took out the previous oil bun and handed it to Yuanya along with the oil bun. He stuttered as he replied, "I'm not hungry. You can eat it yourself." "You can speak?" Yuanya was stunned for a moment. He raised his hand and said, "You can eat it. I already ate with master." However, as Yuanya waved his hand, a thunderous sound came from his stomach. "Haha, you can eat it yourself." Xiaohua threw the oil bun and laughed. Seeing the oil bun being thrown over, Yuanya casually caught it with his hand. It was extremely easy for him to catch it without any signs of panic. However, Xiaohua had already seen Yuanya's vigorous skills on the mountain road in the afternoon. He was not surprised. Then, in front of Xiaohua, Yuanya did not wolf down the food in his hand. Instead, he carefully chewed and swallowed it slowly. It was as if every bite was delicious and every bite was not easy to obtain. When Yuanya finished the last bun, he carefully wrapped it in oil again and put it into his arms. It seemed that he would not finish all the food and would always leave some for emergencies. Then, Yuanya walked to the back of the room and stood in front of a huge water tank. He opened the lid and scooped up the ladle inside. He also took small sips of water. Then he slowly walked to the center of the Taoist temple. He glanced at Xiaohua, whose posture did not change at all. He jumped onto the trunk of a pine tree and used his hands and feet to climb up the tree like a monkey. He casually sat on a branch. his body swayed along with the branch, but unexpectedly, he did not fall. Yuanya raised his eyes and looked into the distance. It was outside the Taoist temple. The moonlight shone on the foothills. Then he reached into his pocket and took out a fist-sized thing. This thing looked like a peach, but there were a few small holes on it. Yuanya put this thing to his mouth. Then, a sad whimpering sound came from this strange thing. This sobbing sound rose and fell, and it was actually very rhythmic. In the dark night, under the moonlight, it was like a gurgling stream flowing endlessly. Xiaohua originally had a smile on his face as he listened, but after a while, he started to frown. Obviously, from this nameless piece of music, Xiaohua could hear the bitterness and longing in Yuanya's heart. Damn it. Yeah, you still want me to sleep? I have to listen to your damn song every day. What are you thinking about? You didn't say anything when I asked you to. If you really want to, then go look for her. If you keep playing, I'll throw your son into Liao River. Suddenly, the old man's angry roar came from the west wing, interrupting Yuanya's music. Yuanya didn't say anything and immediately put away the so-called sun. Then, he used his hand to hold the back of his head and lay down on the branch to rest. This guy is actually sleeping on a tree branch. No wonder I couldn't find his bedding in the entire Taoist temple. Xiaohua understood from below and couldn't help but be astonished. Then, Xiaohua blew on the oil lamp and extinguished it. He also closed his eyes and started to meditate. The entire Taoist temple was filled with the gentle sound of the wind. Outside the Taoist temple, wild insects were chirping, and thunderous snoring sounds came from the east wing. The night quickly passed. When the sun rose, Yuanya took advantage of the thin mist and jumped down from the tree branch. Not only did he fill the water tank with water, but he also lit a fire on a simple stove beside the water tank. He placed a small pot on top of it and began to cook porridge. While cooking porridge, Yuanya picked up a broom and swept the fallen leaves and dust in the Taoist temple clean. Xiaohua opened his eyes and looked. Yesterday's scraped wrist and arm were already healed. Even Xiaohua was surprised by the healing ability of Yuanya's body. Looking at the fire on the stove and smelling the fragrance of the rice in the small pot, Xiaohua bitterly smiled. According to the old man's weak divine sense, even if he wasn't at the foundation establishment stage, he was at the 12th layer of the qi refining stage. He should have already fasted long ago and didn't need to eat these things. Xiaohua didn't understand why he was greedy for these things. However, Xiaohua didn't think too much about it. He clumsily got up and slowly walked out of the Taoist temple. He looked around and walked to a small open space next to the Taoist temple. Facing the morning sun, he opened his mouth and swallowed a mouthful of sun essence. Then he stretched out his hand and started to practice the Big Dipper magical fist. After Xiaohua practiced a few times, he stopped and raised his head to look at the pine branch sticking out of the wall of the Taoist temple. He said with a smile, "Yuanya, do you want to learn?" Whoosh! There was the sound of the branch shaking. Yuanya, who was originally hiding on the branch and peeking, immediately escaped along the branch. He was even more nimble than a squirrel. Ho ho! Xiaohua chuckled. He already knew that although this young man by the name of Yuanya was simple and honest, he was also extremely alert. He would give him his food, but if he wanted to talk to him, he would need to be in closer contact. What's the use of a few flowery moves? That old man also got up and walked over from the wall of the Taoist temple. The bruises on his eyes were still there, making him look very strange. He coldly said, "If you're some kind of mutant, then show me a few spells. Also help this old man vent his anger." Xiaohua unhappily rolled his eyes and said indifferently, "I'm not some kind of mutant, and I don't know any kind of spells. I'll only stay here and return your favor, then I'll leave immediately." "Oh? You can talk?" the old man said in surprise. This old man thought you had some kind of strange origin. However, if you want to get close to this old man, there's no need to deliberately give yourself the surname Xiao. This old man wants you to return my favor. It's just pure nonsense. What? I'm deliberately getting close to you? You're not mistaken, right? Xiaohua was very surprised. He pointed at his own nose and said, "What do you have that's worth getting close to?" Whether it's true or not, you know it yourself. The old man flicked his sleeve. He didn't ask Xiaohua's name, nor did he ask about Xiaohua's origin. He turned around and walked back to the Taoist temple. These two people are really interesting. Xiaohua touched his nose. He was very curious. However, he also somewhat understood why this old man didn't respect him at all. Listening to this old man's words, it seemed like someone had used a similar method to get close to him before. Forget it. Xiaohua didn't pay attention to this anymore. He used both his hands and feet to start his homework under the morning sun. Now, Xiaohua's divine sense had also recovered a bit. Under his divine sense, Xiaohua could clearly see that his bones had already turned into an ordinary gray color. However, under the cool current of the Big Dipper God Fist, wherever it flowed, his bones would turn into a sparkling and translucent orange color. This orange color was so pure that it made Xiaohua feel an indescribable sense of pride. Of course, wherever it flowed, a faint yellow crystal filament would be born in the orange color. Xiaohua understood that after obtaining the origin of earth, the second layer of tempering of his bones had already been completed. He had now officially entered the third layer of tempering. His body's attribute had also changed into the metal attribute. After examining his bones, Xiaohua looked at the traces of earth crystal Yao milk in his body and bitterly smiled. His mind entered the space again. Everything in the space looked the same as before. After Jade Archive Xiaohua appeared, he waved his hand and the rainbow-colored conch fell into his hand. After looking at it a few times, he couldn't find any clues. Jade Archive Xiaohua frowned. He didn't know what to do with this object. Xiaohua didn't want to tell anyone about the secrets of the space. He didn't want to tell Little Black and Little Yellow. They were his children and regarded the space as their home. Moreover, they didn't know what the space was. If it wasn't because she was on the verge of death that day, he would never have taken her in here. Today, had returned to her human form. Xiaohua didn't dare to let her out. He still didn't have a good plan to deal with her. This conch was obviously not an ordinary object. It must be related to the dark mantra. Xiaohua wanted to take advantage of the fact that it hadn't formed yet to throw it out. But the problem was, where should he throw it? He definitely couldn't throw it out in the wilderness. He could only put it in the spirit storage bag. However, Xiaohua didn't know whether the spirit storage bag had any drawbacks to this conch. Forget it, I'll put it in the space first. Jade Archive Xiaohua waved his hand and the seven-colored conch disappeared again. If there's any movement, let the green-robed boy deal with it. This spiritual fire? After putting the five-colored conch in a secret place, Jade Archive Xiaohua waved his hand and a red and yellow spiritual fire appeared in his palm. This spiritual fire was the same as before. It was sparkling and translucent, without any impurities. It also didn't have any heat. However, beside the previous scarlet red, there was now a bit of yellow. This yellow and scarlet red were like a lotus flower on a stalk. In the middle, there was an indescribable layer of something that connected the two. I thought this spiritual fire could only be ignited by the origin of fire. Now it seems, if the origin of earth can be ignited, then the other elements of water, metal, and wood can also be ignited. In the end, wouldn't it become a five-colored spiritual fire? Jade Archive Xiaohua smiled and said, "It's actually much more powerful than the Lingyu Zhu flame, right?" "Oh, that's right. Since this red-yellow spiritual fire has the earth attribute, then it should also have the effect of dissolving the earth crystal Yao milk, right?" Jade Archive Xiaohua thought and was about to leave with the spiritual fire. However, just as the light flashed, Jade Archive Xiaohua thought of something and waved his hand. The jade eye that he obtained from Xian Cheng's water avoidance art appeared in his hand. He smiled and called out to the green-robed Xiaohua, "Fellow Taoist, thank you for your trouble." "No trouble." The green-robed Xiaohua stopped his comprehension and looked at the jade eye in Jade Archive Xiaohua's hand and said, "I can't understand this object. Give it to the one in the Buddha's saraira." Hee. Jade Archive Xiaohua slapped his forehead and came to his senses. He nodded and said, "I was wrong." Chapter 3143. Xiaohua came out of the space and threw the water avoidance technique to the Buddha Sarira to comprehend. He then sent the spiritual fire into his meridians. Sure enough, with the spiritual fire, the refining of the earth crystal Yao milk was much faster. Not only did the spiritual light gradually expand, even his meridians were gradually expanding. There was even a lot of true qi in his meridians that turned into true essence. Good, Xiaohua almost clapped his hands. Another spiritual fire flew out and sent to the primordial spirit of his physical body. He then withdrew from his physical body. When Xiaohua came out and opened his eyes, he immediately felt that there was a heavy object in front of his arm. His arm seemed to have a natural reaction. He slightly stretched out his arm and the heavy object was sent flying. Good, the old man's voice immediately entered Xiaohua's ears. Xiaohua stopped and looked at the situation around him. He could not help but smile. Opposite him, Yuanya was holding a broom in his hand. He was lying on the ground in a sorry state. His robe was covered in dust. The old man was standing very far away with interest. He clapped his hands and laughed. Xiaohua raised his head and looked at the sky. The sun had already risen 3 poles. He already understood that during the time he was in the space, Yuanya came to call him. He only closed his eyes and immersed himself in the Big Dipper magical fist. Yuanya did not know that if he wanted to wake him up, he would have to compete with his Big Dipper magical fist. Although Yuanya's hands and feet were very nimble and strong, compared to him, the difference was huge. Just now, before he opened his eyes, Yuanya should have used the broom as a weapon and was naturally sent flying by his arm. Xiaohua stopped and said with a smile, "Yuanya, sorry to offend you." Yuanya's eyes flashed with a trace of astonishment. His eyebrows trembled. It was unknown what he was thinking, but he did not answer. "What is your name?" At this time, the old man opened his mouth and said, "I have seen many powerful people who could defeat you with their eyes closed. I have never seen anyone like you. You are the first." "I am Xiaohua." Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, "How should I address you?" The old man looked at Xiaohua with a smile and replied, "Naturally, my surname is also Xiao. However, I cannot tell you my name. You can call me Spiritual Master Xiao." "What?" Xiaohua was stunned. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. Your surname is also Xiao? Spiritual Master Xiao?" "Yeah. I am Taoist Master Xiao." The old man shrugged his shoulders. "Taoist Xiao is my Dharma name. Of course, ordinary people also call me Taoist Xiao." "Forget it." Xiaohua was speechless. He nodded and said, "I understand Taoist Xiao." That's right, even though Xiaohua is Taoist Xiao in the Dawn Rain continent, but in the hidden immortal continent, this Taoist Xiao is before Xiaohua. "Go and eat." Taoist Xiao waved his hand in satisfaction. "Later, you and Yo will follow me to Longevity Town. I want to see if those bald donkeys still dare to attack me. Alas, if I had known, I wouldn't have let you move the stones in the Taoist temple yesterday. If I had brought you along, how could this old man have suffered such a huge loss?" Sweat. Xiaohua almost wanted to wipe the sweat off his forehead. He, a grand late Jindan stage cultivator, was actually going to be this so-called Taoist Zhao's hired thug. However, Xiao Taoist priest simply ignored Xiaohua. He turned around and returned to the Taoist temple. After Xiaohua gave all the food to Yuanya, who was somewhat in awe of him, Xiao Taoist priest walked out of the east wing wearing yesterday's clothes. "How was it?" Taoist Xiao shook the ground with his bamboo pole and asked after coughing twice. "How was it?" Xiaohua was somewhat puzzled. He turned his head to look at Yuanya, who was nimbly cleaning up the bowls, chopsticks and other things. "I am asking you." Taoist Xiao felt good about himself. How was this old man dressed like a Taoist? Cough cough. Xiaohua couldn't help but cough twice. He pretended to smile and said, "Why would a Taoist like you need to dress like this? Even if you don't wear clothes, you still look like a Taoist." Hee. Taoist Xiao heard this and his face flushed red. He immediately became spirited. He stuck out his chest and said with a smile, "Not bad, not bad, Xiaohua, you are indeed not bad. This old man didn't bring you out in vain. And you owe this old man a favor. First reduce it by 10%. Yes, Xiao Hua laughed loudly in his heart. He couldn't help but have some thoughts. He said with a smile, no matter what, it is Taoist's favor. It is this one's fortune to be able to meet Taoist. Even if this one has returned Taoist's favor, in the future, if Taoist has any errands, please feel free to instruct me. Xiao Hua kept calling him Taoist, making Taoist Xiao radiant with joy and extremely comfortable. However, Taoist Xiao still instructed in a low voice, when Taoist calls me Taoist, cough cough, it is still a Taoist title. This old man wants to be low-key. Yes, this one understands. Taoist. Xiao Hua almost held his stomach. He looked at the ground and held back his laughter. He said in a low voice, this one will only call Taoist in front of others. Good, the child is worth teaching. Taoist Xiao reached out his hand to stroke his beard. Unfortunately, the beard that was still there yesterday was gone today. Perhaps it was because of something that Xiao Hua didn't know about yesterday. Xiao Hua was really choking. However, he still happily touched his still smooth face. Yes, an old thing that was almost 200 years old still had the appearance of an 18-year-old. This really made Xiao Hua arrogant enough. The arrogant Taoist Xiao shouted loudly, why haven't you tidied up yet? Can't you see that this old man and your senior brother are waiting anxiously? Look at your clumsy appearance. In the future, you should learn more from your senior brother. Sweat. Xiao Hua looked at Yuan Ye, who was washing his hands. These things, to be honest, Xiao Hua seemed to be able to do it as well. However, he hadn't done it for 100 years. If he were to do these things, he definitely wouldn't be as good as Yuan Ye. How could Yuan Ye be clumsy? In particular, this so-called Taoist Xiao suddenly took a late golden core stage cultivator as his disciple. He really had a wild imagination. Perhaps this Taoist Xiao wants to say that I am clumsy and clumsy. Xiao Hua smiled as he looked at Yuan Ye coming over. Yuan Ye's expression was still as calm as before. There was a sense of intimacy and vigilance, but there was no jealousy or resentment. What are you going to do with your hammer? This old man is going to earn money. If you carry this hammer, even if someone dares to look for this old man, I'm afraid they will be scared away by you, right? Seeing that Yuan Ye was about to walk to the corner to take the big hammer, Taoist Xiao couldn't help but scold him. Then, Yuan Ye responded and quickly walked to Taoist Zhao's side. However, when he saw that Xiao Hua was standing in front of him, he actually didn't know what to do. Hurry up and help this old man hold it. Taoist Xiao coldly snorted again. It seemed that he wasn't very satisfied with Yuan Ye. At this time, Xiao Hua hurriedly retreated a few steps, making space next to Taoist Xiao. Only then did Yuan Ye let out a sigh of relief. He walked forward a few steps, walked to where Xiao Hua was standing just now, and reached out his hand to take the bamboo pole. Let's go! Taoist Xiao reached out his hand and snapped his fingers. He very confidently turned around, as if he was really a real person. He calmly walked out of the dilapidated mountain gate and went down the mountain. Similarly, Yuan Ye habitually followed behind Taoist Xiao. However, after walking a few steps, he thought of something and turned his head to look at Xiao Hua. He blinked his eyes and reached out his hand to take out the oil bun from last night, wanting to give it to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua didn't need to look. Naturally, he knew that it was the meat bun that Yuan Ye wasn't willing to eat in the morning. He slightly smiled, waved his hand, and hurriedly followed behind Yuan Ye. After a night of tempering and practicing the Big Dipper magical fist in the morning, Xiao Hua had now somewhat adapted to the weight of his body. Although he wasn't as agile as Yuan Ye, catching up to Taoist Xiao wasn't a problem. Coming down from the top of the mountain, there was a large road. It was the place where the family of 4 stopped last night. Now, there were already some pedestrians. There were even carriages that stirred up a cloud of dust as they left. Looking at Taoist Xiao going down the mountain road, he immediately had the appearance of an expert. His eyes slightly narrowed, and from who knows where, he took out a horsetail whisk. One of his hands was placed in front of his chest, while the other hand was swinging the horsetail whisk from time to time. His mouth was muttering, "Give advice on marriage, give advice on confusion, divination to dispel the bloody light. This Xiaohua was originally leisurely walking behind Yuanya. When he heard Taoist Zhao's strange words, he almost lost his footing and fell into the dust. This and the Taoist that he thought were really too different. This lady. Just as Xiaohua was tidying up his mood, a young woman just happened to walk out of the tea shed. Taoist Zhao's eyes lit up. He quickly walked a few steps, raised his hand and swung the horsetail whisk, saying, "I see that your red luan stars are moving. I'm afraid that in a few days, a good fate will come close to you, mother." Unfortunately, before Taoist Xiao even got close, a 3 or 4-year-old girl bounced out of the tea shed and said with some dissatisfaction, "Wait for a boy." Taoist Zhao's hand froze in place just like that. However, in the blink of an eye, Taoist Xiao lowered his head and looked at the girl. With a kind face, he smiled and said, "Little sister, how old are you? I see that you have a good bone structure and an outstanding appearance. In the future, you will definitely become a hero of this generation. The heavy responsibility of saving the hidden immortal continent. I'm afraid that I will have to hand it over to you. And this old man has a secret manual here. It only costs 3 silver pieces. Take it, it will definitely help you in the future." While speaking, Taoist Xiao felt around in his bosom and took out a small, thin, green leather book. His gaze, however, was looking at the girl in front of him. Wah! At first, the girl was still curiously looking at Taoist Xiao, but in the end, she was so scared that she started crying. "Crazy!" The girl did not hesitate to scold Taoist Xiao. "Kind-hearted woman." Taoist Zhao's face was magnanimous and merciful. He smiled and said, "You and I are fated people. In my hand, I have my Taoist secret manual. Now, because of fate, child's father." The girl shouted loudly. "What's wrong?" A burly man walked out of the tea shed with a meat bun in his mouth. His mouth was full of oil. "Someone is molesting me." The girl fiercely glared at Taoist Xiao and shouted. Chapter 3144. Who is so daring? The man was furious. He looked around and his gaze landed on Taoist Xiao. Taoist Xiao shrank his head and took a few steps back. The secret book that he had extended was also pulled back. Quang quang. A few muffled sounds could be heard. It was the sound of a bamboo pole hitting the ground. Yuanya took the opportunity to take 2 steps forward. His cold eyes swept over the burly man. Yuanya's eyes were extremely cold. Even Xiaohua could sense the danger within. The burly man couldn't help but shiver when Yuanya glared at him. He then looked at Taoist Xiao with disdain and waved his hand. "Let's go. Don't lower yourself to his level." Then, the woman picked up the baby girl and walked away with the burly man. Hee. Taoist Xiao seemed to be used to this. However, he still shrugged and said to Xiaohua helplessly, "You see, this old man, what should I say? This old man is too low-key. They can't see through this old man's inner meaning. They can't understand the meaning behind this old man's words. Too high and too few people. Too bad, too bad." Then, the secret book was sent into one of the 2 sleeves. With a wave of his horsetail whisk, he walked forward again. Xiaohua only had a smile on his face. He felt that it was fun. However, after he walked a few steps, he raised his eyebrows again. He turned his head and looked at the tea shed that the burly man had just walked out of. Next to the tea shed, under a large banyan tree, 2 old men were facing a chessboard and playing. There didn't seem to be anything wrong. However, Xiaohua knew that the 2 old men's eyes weren't on the chessboard. Instead, they were looking at Taoist Xiao and Yuanya. How strange, Xiaohua blinked his eyes. He looked at the 2 figures in front of him thoughtfully. He didn't understand. These 2 people? What was there to monitor? Longevity Town was a large town with a radius of tens of li. Moreover, it was next to a river. It should have been extremely prosperous. Unfortunately, the river flowed outside the town, and the current was extremely rapid, so there was no suitable place for the boats to dock. Therefore, all the boats had to dock at the town of Jishuan, which was about 100 li away from Longevity Town. This was why Jishuan Town was prosperous and Longevity Town was desolate. Of course, whether Longevity Town was desolate or not didn't affect Daoist Zhao's livelihood. Xiaohua followed Daoist Xiao to the side of a restaurant in town. Daoist Xiao raised his eyes to look, coughed twice, and slowly walked to the intersection of the three main roads. He stood there proudly. Yuanya didn't stay idle either. He quickly placed the bamboo pole on the big tree beside Daoist Xiao and left. After a while, he returned with a small table and a chair. After Yuanya placed the table and chair under the big tree, Daoist Xiao slowly walked over. After sitting down, he placed the cloth bag on his shoulder on the table. Then, he stretched out his hand and took out a round bamboo tube. Inside the bamboo tube were nearly 100 thin bamboo sticks. Seeing Daoist Xiao sit down, Yuanya hurriedly took the bamboo pole from the tree. He lowered his head and looked at the ground. With a pu sound, the bamboo pole was forcefully stabbed into the ground. At the top of the bamboo pole, on the banner, there was a large Dao character. Looking at it, Xiaohua was particularly dazzled. Not only that, Yuanya walked in front of Daoist Xiao's table and took out 2 red strips of cloth from the cloth bag. He hung them on the 2 sides of the table. When Xiaohua looked at it, he saw that on the left and right of the cloth, there were 2 words written on it: foretelling future with mouth, foretelling good or bad luck with eyes. After doing all this, Yuanya walked behind Daoist Xiao and stood there, motionless. However, after a short moment, he seemed to have thought of something. He looked at Xiaohua and hurriedly moved to the left. There was actually an empty spot. What made Xiaohua feel even more helpless was that Daoist Xiao actually turned around and looked at him, indicating that Xiaohua should stand behind him. Xiaohua was once again secretly happy. Even if he was a golden core cultivator. Forget it. Xiaohua only thought about it for a moment. With a smile on his face, he walked behind Daoist Xiao and stood there obediently. At this time, it was already close to noon. There were many people on the road. There were men and women, old and young. There were also some scholars holding books in their hands. There were also some wearing martial arts clothes and weapons in their hands. Of course, there was no lack of bald monks wearing monk robes. They were chanting some unknown scriptures. Their gazes were either hostile or disdainful as they swept past Xiaohua and the other 2. Xiaohua stood there. He was different from Yuanya. Yuanya had his eyes closed. It was unknown what he was thinking. Xiaohua was looking around with wide eyes. This was a fork in the road. It seemed to be a lively place in Longevity Town. There were all kinds of shops on the 3 roads. There were grocery stores, cloth stores, shoe stores, grocery stores, and so on. As long as it was something that could be used by ordinary people, it seemed that it could be bought in the shops on the street. Xiaohua had been in Xiaoyu continent for dozens of years. Although he had been to many big cities and seen many spirit pill stores and weapon refinement stores, he had never seen these kinds of ordinary businesses. Looking at this lively scene, a kind of distant memory seemed to be slowly awakened. A few familiar faces and even familiar things slowly emerged. Not bad. Lu Zhen. The small town. Xiaohua's eyes were already filled with hot tears. Similar to Longevity Town, there was a story of a hero saving a beauty. Unfortunately, these faces and things were only vague. No matter how hard Xiaohua tried, he couldn't recall them clearly. It must be the doing of the Almighty who sealed this Xiao's soul. Xiaohua sneered. Wait until this Xiao finds an opportunity to break this seal. Then, everything from before will be known. However, the resentment in Xiaohua's heart didn't stop the desire in his eyes. Xiaohua's eyes wandered around the street. He really wanted to find his own story from here. Gurgle gurgle. A sound fell into Xiaohua's ears. Xiaohua looked down and saw that Daoist Xiao, who was sitting behind the table, was now somewhat restless. His butt was vigorously twisting on the chair, but his eyes were occasionally glancing at the restaurant that was only a few dozen feet away from the table. Not only was there the aroma of wine and meat drifting over, there were also many people in bright clothes going in and out. Daoist Xiao couldn't help but speak. Yes, master. Yuanya opened his eyes and lightly replied. Go to the bun shop and give master 2 buns on credit. Taoist Xiao instructed. Remember, I want pork and onion buns. Yes, Yuan Ye didn't say anything else and went. Xiao Hua, you're hungry too, right? Taoist Xiao asked in a low voice. I'm fine. Xiao Hua replied with a smile. This one's appetite is small, so I'm not hungry for a day after eating some. Ah, that's great. Taoist Xiao said with some envy. This old man always feels like I can't eat my fill. And in a while, you can eat one of the 2 buns. This old man will eat the other one first to fill my stomach. When we have a business, this old man will treat you to the Shun restaurant. Yes, thank you, master. Xiao Huan naturally saw the name of the restaurant that was next to them. Shu, keep a low profile. Don't call me master, call me Taoist Xiao. Taoist Xiao hurriedly said in a low voice. Yes, thank you, Taoist Xiao. Xiao Huan nodded. At this moment, there was chaos on the street. A noisy voice came from afar. Quickly, quickly, the monster is here, the monster is here. Oh! Xiao Hua's ears were sharp and he had already heard it. He unconsciously looked over. About 300 meters to the right, although the street was in chaos, it wasn't the kind of panic and fear that Xiao Hua had imagined. Instead, it was a kind of chaos where people were hiding and watching the fun. The street that was originally bustling with activity became even more lively. Everyone was hiding, making way in the middle of the street. Even more people ran to the shops on the street. There were even some people who actually poked their heads out from the 2nd and 3rd floors of the tea houses and restaurants. Hee, as expected, it's the hidden, immortal continent. It's different from Lu Zhen or Xiao Yu continent. Xiao Hua looked at all of this and sighed in his heart. It seemed like he could never see the end of the 100 forms of the world. Not long after, from the middle of the street in the distance, an ugly brawny man with a height of 2 zhang walked over. This burly man's skin was coarse, and there was only one eye on his huge head. 2 emerald green tongues would stick out from the gaping hole that resembled a mouth from time to time. Although this brawny man was wearing a silk robe and looked like a human, under that robe, there were thick feet and a long tail sticking out. It was very obvious. The brawny man's single eye looked left and right, as if he didn't understand the reaction of these people. His curled tail was still casually swinging behind him. Evildoer! Taoist Xiao stood up at an unknown time. He looked at the brawny man and coldly said, if someone is willing to pay money, this old man will suppress him right now. Xiao Taoist master's voice was very loud. Not only did Xiao Hua hear it, but the people around him also heard it. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua was the only one who paid attention. The others seemed to have turned a deaf ear. Naturally, they wouldn't give him any money. In the time it took to brew a cup of tea, that brawny man walked away. No one knew where he went, and the whole street returned to its calm state. Taoist Xiao sighed and sat down. It was obvious that he was a hero who had no place to show his skills. Master! At this time, Yuan Ye came back. However, he didn't have a meat bun in his hand. There was only a teacup filled with orange tea. The lady boss of the bun shop didn't give Disciple credit, so Disciple could only ask for a cup of tea from the tea stall for Master. Why didn't she give us credit? Wasn't the previous debt already settled yesterday? Taoist Xiao was somewhat flustered and exasperated. How could they treat this old man like this? The lady boss said. Yuan Ye didn't care about Taoist Zhao's feelings at all. He honestly replied, we owe 20 copper coins. It has already been half a year. She asked for it countless times but still couldn't get it back. In the past, she could not give us credit. She was afraid that we wouldn't pay her back even a single copper coin in anger. Now that it's finally settled, she won't give us any more buns on credit. She's afraid that she won't be able to sleep well in the future. Damn it. Your hair is long and your knowledge is short. Taoist Xiao stomped his feet and fiercely said, look at how imposing this old man was when he was the king of the country. Now, it's only because I want to live longer that I changed my cultivation to immortality. Wait until this old man becomes an immortal, then it will be too late for regrets. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.